Welcome back to the Gfinity Arena. It's day one of the Hearthstone Summer Masters 2, and we are about to conclude Group A. It's our deciding match for the second place. Hoy is already through. Cypher is already eliminated. We have two players left. It's Weasel and Faeli. Lothar, it's been a great group so far. We've seen some really interesting games. Hoy advancing pretty comfortably, but these two players have certainly shown, we haven't seen from Faeli, obviously his other game, but they've both shown that they're capable.
Yeah, and I like those matches the most, you know, the elimination matches. Those are the most important ones. Those are putting a lot of pressure on the players, so they're more delicate, I would say. And this is the most interesting match for the viewers too, because I think that most people are kind of, you know, pessimistic always, so they look forward to the elimination of a player. So this just pumps up the emotions.
But we like to see the players qualifying. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. No, it's all about the elimination.
Raymond, thanks for joining us on the desk. Welcome.
Oh, thanks.
You casted Faeli's first game, and obviously it was a 3-0 loss to Hoy, who has looked like the strongest player so far. But did you see anything from him that would give you confidence going into this match?
Yeah, I mean, he's just beat Cypher, right?
Yeah, 3-0.
Yeah, so that's pretty nice. I mean, Cypher was probably at least my favourite to win the whole tournament. So coming off a victory there is pretty decent. He played well in the first set that I casted. It's just that Hoy had a really good start, and you know, Hoy played exceptional, and some of the games were really close as well. So it's not like he did get 3-0'd, but it wasn't like a steamroll. He didn't just play badly or anything, lose to that. It really was. Yeah,
that's true. Especially with the opening hands he had.
Yeah,
you know, that can happen.
It was a double quartermaster first game, I think. Yeah, that was pretty horrible.
Let's talk about Weasel as well. He looked really good in that match against Hoy. He really did give Hoy a run for his money in some of those games, Lothar.
Well, he did, but unfortunately he lost. So he will be looking for the redemption here. I can't really put any bet here on any of the players. I think they both pretty much even. And with the deck list they brought here, I think that's even no clear favor when it comes to deck choices. So it will be really interesting match to see how the players will make the choices in game, because the decks are not like particularly strong against each other.
What have we got? We've got the Patron Warrior, the Druid, and the Paladin from Faeli, and it's the Malygos Warlock, the Druid, and the mid-range Paladin from Weasel. So Druid and Paladin, the classes of the day so far.
Well,
everyone who's seen has played them.
Druid is always in the metagame, so it's no.
It's like Control Warrior. It's always relevant.
Yeah. The problem is, like, after TGT was being released, some of the players in the top tier teams are saying maybe it's the time that the Druid needs to, you know, be lower tier when it comes to power level of the decks, but it always comes back. It always comes back. It's really weird. I mean, it's not weird when you look at the cards like Elevate.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's
and
like a really steady deck, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's always been pretty reliable. It doesn't. There's not a lot of chances to actually just completely whiff your opening hand and the game's lost. It's that any time you get the ramp, and especially with some of the players bringing both the ramp cards in the Dionysus Aspirant and the Wild Growth, you know, over the course of a best of 5, the odds on drawing, you know, into that at some point is so high that, and the second you do, the game's not like so difficult to lose to a certain extent, because you ramp in so far, and unless your opponent can really deal with it perfectly, you get so far ahead, and then you just start dropping your bombs, and then there's the combo that everyone has to play around all of the time.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with both players so far is they're both very extensive note takers, both writing down pretty much everything that's played. There are some players who are like that and write down just every card that it is that their opponent's playing. What do you think the wisdom is of taking notes in games versus a guy like Hoy, who was just kind of sitting back and letting things come?
It's like a difference. That's my private opinion here. When I play at home, I never use deck trackers. I never write anything down because I want to train my memory. And I want to be fully focused on the game. So when I go to a live event and I will be playing under the pressure that will be, you know, in a, let's say the DreamHack at Gfinity or other offline event, you want to be still, you want to have the same setup as at home. So the most basic setup, the game and you, and nothing else. And when you use the deck tracker, or when you use a pen and paper, you're dividing the attention between two stuff. And I think that's not something you want to do. I mean, that's my private opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really similar, actually. I mean, I've played in a few tournaments where, because I know a lot of players do take notes, a lot of really good players like Caldi, for example, is notorious for taking a lot of notes when he's playing. I gave it a try, but then I just thought, I'm actually like looking away from the game. It sounds really stupid, but looking away, writing notes and then back, and it's like, I'd rather just stay focused on one thing. But there are a lot of players like Caldi who are exceptional players, and they do take a lot of notes. So I think it's a complete preference century.
Yeah, one thing that Freshka I think suggested at one point was using the interactable parts of the board to count particular important cards in your opponent's deck. Do you?
Yeah, I use that for an example, the coin. If someone uses the coin, I just use the movement the movable object on the board that it's always there's like always one of that on the board, so I know that the coin was used, or he didn't even have the coin, because if I have the coin, I already move it, right?
I try that, but my problem is I forget what I'm tracking. That's the problem, because you track different things against different classes.
But I think the most important skill you want to develop as a card player is to know which cards are being kept from the mulligan, which cards are being still in the hand after, let's say, 6 turns or 7, which one was being like pulled out on turn 2 to maybe target something, and they're still in the hand. Those kind of little things that can
actually makes a big impact. Actually, it's really difficult to do when you first start trying to. You've really got to focus on training yourself to actually keep a track of where the card positions are in your opponent's hand, and it does make an impact. As we saw in one of the games earlier, where there was a thought that Malygos could be in hand because he's kept like the first 3 cards for like 6 turns or something, 7 turns, and not played them. And rightly so, you've got to. Even though Malygos wasn't there, it's worth playing around, because the second you don't play around something like that is when you'd lose to it.
You can see the classes on the screen here now. Obviously, we did talk about the lineups. Paladin Druid for both, Warrior for Faeli, and Warlock for Weasel. Weasel locking in that Malygos lock straight away, whereas the Druid for Faeli. You and I, Raven, were talking about this during the last game, actually. We both think that perhaps when you're playing in a Conquest format and you have Druid in your lineup, when you're confident with your 2 other decks, you should maybe play those first, because then you have 3 chances to win with Druid if you go 2-0, and there's a good chance that in 1 of 3 games, Druid is going to draw really well with the ramp. What do you think, Lothar?
Well, I lost because of that in DreamHack semifinals, when my Druid lost 0-3. I was 2-0, and then I lost with the Druid 0-3 because I didn't draw the ramp. In any of the games, that can happen actually to any kind of the deck, that you will have a bad draw, bad opening hand, but at the same time, Druid is really depending on the wild growth and inner raid.
Sometimes it really wrecks you. We'll pour one out for Cypher. We didn't see it on stream, but in both of his series, he lost to a Druid combo being played before turn 9.
You can't really play around that.
But one of the things to mention on the Druid thing, that's completely right. And, relying on Druid as your last deck's pretty okay. But he has Warrior as well. So, if you have to fall back on Patron, that's pretty okay as well. It's not too bad.
Absolutely. Faeli, the only player we've seen so far playing Patron.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a huge surprise. Really, I mean, we all spoke last night, and even this morning about we're just going to see patrons everywhere.
This is what I was saying to you guys. Having spoken to a few of the players, I asked every one of them, what deck do you think would be the most common? And they all said straight away Patron Warrior. But at least 3 of them then turned around and told me, but actually, I've not brought it. So maybe there is a sense that people are starting to counter Patron, so people are taking it out of their lineups.
Maybe it's the same as last Gfinity. Everyone was saying Patron Warrior, Patron Warrior, and then everyone was playing Dragon Warlock. I mean Malygos Warlock, because they wanted to counter the Patron, right? And
the handlock as well.
Yeah, I think one of the points as well is, if Patron's not one of your decks, as in all these players will have played Patron, but you get certain players that have played it a bit, but not tons. So it's like, if they're just not comfortable with it, then it's probably, I'm always of the belief it's better playing something that you're really comfortable with, especially a deck like Patron that's so intricate. If you've got if you're not completely happy with it, you could slip up and lose a game because of it.
Yeah. Guys, predictions from this very close matchup.
I could really tell. I mean, I would say Weasel. Okay, I would say Weasel.
Raven?
Yeah, I'm going to take Faeli.
I'm gonna take Weasel as well. I think he looked really good in that last one. Hop on Twitter, let us know what you think. Let us know in Twitch chat. All the socials are at the bottom there for you. You can interact with us in any way that you like. There's so many ways you can get involved in this weekend's show and have your voice heard. But waiting to take us this match are Monk and Solo. Guys, what do you think?
Thanks, Callum. I'm Monk, and I'm joined here with Sato on the caster desk. It's the first time we've been casting together, so welcome. I'm sure we'll do a pretty fine job.
I hope so.
So, first match of the day, or third match of the day, final match of this group to determine who makes it into the playoffs for tomorrow. It's going to be these 2 players, Weasel versus Faeli. Who do you think is going to have the favorite?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen too much of Faeli play today. I would like to also point out it's disappointing, just purely from a bias perspective for a start, that we didn't get to see Cypher on stream. UK representative, myself a UK player, I would have loved to see Cypher do well, but just for the stream as well, Cypher is definitely one of the best players in the tournament. It's a shame we didn't see him. But between these 2 players, I I think a few of Weasel's plays over the day have been a little bit shaky, so I'm going to go with Faeli just on... I think if he can just play, solid, consistent Hearthstone, he might have an advantage over Weasel, who's made a couple of shaky plays that I've seen so far. So I'm going to go with Faeli on this one, I think.
Yeah, I know you had mentioned before that there are some plays off-stream against Cypher, for example. Weasel versus Cypher, where Weasel might have not made the optimal play.
Right, yeah. But, that could just be a first game of the day nerves thing. He may, tighten up as time goes on and he gets more comfortable in the booth. But anyway, we are looking like we're ready to go into game 1 here. And it looks like it's going to be a Druid versus the Malilock from Weasel. Pretty good opening hand from Weasel, whereas Faeli is missing his ramp as the Druid. But he does have sort of the backup policy of when you don't draw a ramp as Druid, which is the Shade to play on turn 3. So
yeah, this matchup generally, I think it's pretty even. The stats, at least in Blackrock Mountain, say that they're slightly favored towards Druid with a 9-7 record, so that's 56%.
Okay.
Although I will say that maybe in TGT, the Malygos Warlock got slightly more buffs with the Twilight Guardian.
Sure.
Whereas Druid, maybe they only got the roots, the Darnassus Aspirant. Perhaps not as big of a deal.
Only Darnassus Aspirant and Living Roots?
You got me. Well, if you're Hoy, you're like, I don't even play these cards. They're not that great.
Right. But yeah, we do see the turn 2 hero power coming out here from Faeli, which is obviously not what you want to be doing, especially with Darnassus Aspirant coming into the deck and making your turn 2 much more consistent. So we... passing back to Weasel's turn here, he doesn't have anything to do on turn 2, but he can coin out a 3-drop here if he wants to. He does have the double 3-drop option. Interesting that he's playing both Imp Gang bosses and Blackwing Technicians. What do you think about that, Monk?
Yeah, it's interesting. In previous iterations of Malygos Warlock, you either choose 2 of one or 2 of the other.
Right.
These days, though, because I think you get more dragons in your deck just because of the Twilight Guardians,
Sure.
I think players are more willing to play the Blackwing Technician instead. The Imp Gang boss, though, is really strong. It's all about whether you want to play, like how good do you want to be in the early game. I feel like that's one of the things Malygos Lock generally struggles with, the turn 1, 2, and 3 drops. Sometimes you play Zombie Chow, but it's not really that great early on. So it does make quite a bit of sense that you play multiple 3 drops. I even think that like 3 or 4 3 drops is okay in this scenario.
Sure. Just having the extra 3-drops does increase your chances of something we talked about quite a lot in the last set, where Malilock is kind of viewed as a combo deck first and foremost, but a lot of times it just wins with just good tempo minions, right? Like it just curves out nicely through 3, 4, 5, 6, and just wins on board presence. So having the extra consistency on your 3-drops can help you if you're going for that sort of game plan with the deck. Yeah.
The way I like to think about it is that it's not really necessarily Malygos Warlock. I know that's the like the main card in the deck. It's like the main defining card. But like you said, most oftentimes, like you just have really good minions, Twilight Drake being one of them, and you just curve out really well, and you just like kill your opponent. The Malygos really is only super relevant in the control matchups, like against Priest, against Warlock, or against Handlock, and against Warrior, Control Warrior, that is.
Interesting. Turn 4, just hero powering the Blackwing Technician. He had the option for Keeper of the Grove and trade, but it looks like he's going to go for the long-term value out of his Shade of Naxxramas and leave it stealth too.
Yeah, I think just getting the most value you can out of the Keeper of the Grove, you really want to save that for the Twilight Drakes.
Right.
But also, I think he's setting up for that eventual Druid of the Claw. He wants that 3, or he wants his 4/6 to be able to trade into the 3/4.
Sure. So now it looks like a fairly straightforward... Oh no, he doesn't have a dragon to activate the Twilight Guardian, unfortunately. We're having a bit of a Khaleesi moment here. Where are my dragons? We don't have the activator. Unfortunately, like that's going to mess up his turns for a while here, because something as simple as a dragon in his hand gives him the perfect curve of Twilight Guardian into Blackwing Corruptor. But now he probably needs to save the Twilight Guardian in order to make sure his Blackwing Corruptor is live for next turn.
I think it's actually already messed up his turns, because if he had the Twilight Guardian earlier, he might have considered coining 3-drop into a second 3-drop.
Sure.
Whereas right now he had to tap early on. He's forced to play off curve. And the thing is, like, this Imp Gang boss is not even that great against Druid. Since there's so many options for Druid to deal exactly 4 damage swipe. The Druid of the Claw has 4 attack, and the Pilot Treader just coincidentally has 4 attack, which trades so well into both these minions on the board.
Wow, a situation Piloted Shredder is good in? Amazing.
Couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
It's not like it's like already the best 4-drop in the game by far.
Yeah. So yeah, as you say, Druid of the Claw coming down here, which was the reasoning for the hero power into the 3/5 last turn. So now the board is set up where that Druid of the Claw is set to do a ton of work if Weasel does not have a more efficient answer to it. We do see the Blackwing Corruptor is live because he kept the Twilight Guardian in his hand last turn. So that does allow him to start fighting back a little bit if he wants to. But do you see a better option in hand here, Monk?
Not really. I mean, the problem here is that now the Shade is out of Hellfire range,
right,
and you're not going to get like that much value off of Hellfire. Shadow Flame is an option for later on, but the Shade is going to grow to a 5/5 later on, and you'll probably have to Shadow Flame something like your Blackwing Corruptor, for example.
Right.
But that is something to consider, that once you get the Blackwing Corruptor on the board, you will have the option to Shadow Flame it. If, for example, Faeli plays anything like a second Druid of the Claw, perhaps.
Sure. It's worth noting as well that he does play an Abusive Sergeant in his deck. We didn't see it in the last set, but I saw it come up in the game that I watched that was off stream. So even if that Shade starts to grow to 6/6, 7/7, he does still have the option with Abusive Sergeant if he draws it to get a really powerful board clear. Yeah.
That being said, more likely than not, if the Shade grows to a 7/7, you're probably gonna die before
right
before like you can actually BGH it.
Yeah. Piloted Shredder looks fairly reasonable here. Again, just 2 minions on the board that it just contests fantastically, but doesn't really have a good target for his hero power here, so he might be trying to find a way to be slightly more mana efficient, but it looks like Piloted Shredder is a nice play to me. Okay, he's going to go ahead and trade, and that activates his hero power to clean up the 1/1. I'm not sure how I feel about revealing the Shade and leaving it on 3 health for a nice clean, second Corruptor or Dart Bomb to follow up. But he probably feels like he has enough of a board presence here with the extra Shredder that he can afford to just use the Shade here to take the board.
Not only that, but I do think the Shadow Flame possibility is on his mind.
Right.
And this is like one of those rare circumstances where Weasel pretty much has a 5 attack minion on the board. Normally, you don't really see that because there's like always like swipe to take it down.
He did top deck the second Corruptor this turn, which cleans up that Shade pretty nicely. But that Shredder straight away can just pick up all the value it wants, trading into one of the 5/4s and retaining the 2-drop on board. He's going to choose to remove the first half of the Shredder here. Interesting play. And then looks like he'll probably trade for the 5/3. Oh no, he's gonna go for the value trades here. Interesting.
Yeah, it's quite interesting in these type of matchups where like it's kind of like Zoo versus Zoo or like Druid versus Druid, where you actually are trying to go for board control all the time. It's just that the Druid and the Malagos Warlock are approximately the same speeds. They're both kind of mid-range decks. So getting full board control here is actually really relevant.
I love that play. I missed the fact that sorry, I was misremembering his amount of mana. We have a bit of concealed information on our screen, so I didn't realize he had enough extra mana for the coin Dart Bomb there, which definitely makes the way he did it the strongest play. So how do we feel about just slamming good old turn 7 Dr. Boom here? I feel like it's pretty risky in this situation because you probably just lose the game to Big Game Hunter. Then again, does it just Ancient of War really do much? Same thing. If he has Owl, then you're probably losing the game. So one way or the other, you're going to be in trouble if he has the right answer. So I guess he's just going to go ahead and make the most powerful play he can.
Yeah. One way to think about it, though, is that, like, for example, when you're playing Handlock, you sometimes have the option to play either Mountain Giant or Twilight Drake. And one of them is answered by BGH. The other is answered by Keeper of the Grove.
Right.
But they typically have 1 BGH and 2 Keeper of the Groves in their deck. I think it's the opposite in this type of deck where you expect them to have 2 BGHs, but sometimes they run 1 or 2 Owls. So you might think you probably want to play the card that is less likely to just get blown out of the game, and that's going to be your Ancient War because it's less likely to get silence. But then again, we have perfect information. We see there's 2 BGHs already in Weasel's hand, and I think this play that Faeli did, it's the more winning play. It's the play that can get him back in the game.
Sure. Interestingly enough, we did see double Owl in the last game as well from Weasel. So he's in fact running double BGH and double Owl, which again, like, there's a question that Nimsh and myself were asking each other when we watched Weasel's last set is what has he cut from this deck? Because he's had to fit the extra Twilight Guardians in. He's playing double BGH, he's playing double Owl, he's playing at least 1 Soulfire, and he has that tech Abusive Sergeant in the deck as well. So it's really interesting to see like where he's found room for all these cards. But you know, no matter where he has found the room, it's working out really well for him here against this Druid, because this is exactly the situation that Druid does not want to be in, which is facing down, you know, a board of multiple minions with more than 1 health. Generally, like Druid doesn't have ways of interacting with that.
Yeah, there's no such thing as like a light bomb or a brawl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of the cards that he probably cut, I have to think maybe a Zombie Chow, maybe like either an Ooze or a Farseer that was in the old list.
Right.
And probably a Sludge Belcher is another good card to cut, and the second Defender of Argus.
Okay.
All options.
That makes sense. But even like you say, he may have cut the Farseer that was in the deck. He's playing the extra 3-drop as well, right? Like at least 1 extra 3-drop. So still, you know, very, very tight, compact deck list, however he's ended up with it. I think he's still playing double Healbot as well from what we've seen. So all sorts of tech cards in this deck. It's all coming together pretty nicely.
The funny thing I've noticed about this deck is that we actually haven't seen Malagos.
Right, yeah. Nimsh and I were addressing that last time. It was one of his bottom 5 cards last time, but I think it would be absolutely outrageous to cut Malagos from this deck, right? As much as we keep talking about how it often isn't necessary, yeah, the times where it is are enough to keep it, you know, stapled into the deck. So,
yeah, I think it just Malagos is a really, or just the deck overall, it's a pretty good metagame call in that I think it beats a lot of the other Dragon decks.
Okay.
Dragon Priest, Dragon Warlock, or Dragon Warrior rather. They're all like really slow decks, and they're the decks that really fall prey to Malagos Warlock, a more combo-ish type of deck.
That makes a lot of sense to me, yeah. So we see multiple options here for Faeli as the Druid. He can swipe. He can Azure Drake, try and get a card deeper, potentially picking up his second swipe, which would be pretty great right now. Although you're probably reticent to use both of your swipes before you've seen any implosions come out. And the other option just being to slam the Big Daddy Ancient of War and ask his opponent if he has an answer, which we know, looking at the hand, he has the best possible answer with the Abusive Sergeant Big Game Hunter. So. Interesting. I mean, I would expect to see Ancient of War come down here. It's probably just going to get blown out really hard, but it looks like the strongest play here. Yeah, that's what we end up with.
Yeah, without this type of blowout play, I think it would actually be pretty difficult for Weasel. You see a lot of situational cards in his hand,
right?
But he's not going to be able to develop his board further. This is like kind of the best case scenario, as you'd mentioned, killing a 5/10 taunt, getting some board development, and just rounding out your entire hand. Not only that, but
does he? Is this lethal? So 4 mana to clear the taunt, and then 3, 6... No, not quite. He doesn't have all the mana to cast everything. But, you know, pretty close. He has to use Abusive BGH, right? Like, he can't clear the 5/10 any other way, so it doesn't look like there's a lethal opportunity this turn. If he tapped for Owl, would it be lethal? Don't think it's important. Abusive BGH has to be the play.
It's just way too strong.
Right.
And another thing is that he's able to use both BGHs in his deck for full value, which is something you typically don't get to do versus Druid.
Just in case you weren't already winning this game by enough, you roll 4 on Implosion as well. So the play here, you're going to draw cards this turn, right? Because you have to draw swipe. So what would you think is the correct order to go for the draws here?
I think you have to at least go for 1 Wild Growth first.
Okay.
Well, your backup plan is basically to go for the Force of Nature, but an alternative plan might be go for the Azure Drake and just like hope to God that you draw into your swipe.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that play that Hoy did a few games ago where he went for the Ancient of Lore to draw into Innervate BGH for like the 1 in 10,000.
Whoa. Okay. So oh, hello. All right. Well, that's a card. So he is still going to have to hero power the 4/1 as it will remain, right, to clear up the board. Unless he can somehow magically draw into a Wrath as well. Is that too much to ask? Nope.
Oh.
Well then.
Well, it's a bit lucky, but I think right now, like, Faeli might have turned around a game depending on Weasel's next few draws.
Right, and Weasel is just 1 damage off lethal right now, right? He has 10 in his hand. That's disgusting.
That's not helpful though, this Defender of Argus.
No. That's outrageous. Like Chain Drew, Wrath, and like the swipe itself was not good enough because he still would have had to have hero powered the big game hunter, and he still would have died to the burst in hand. So he needed exactly swipe Wrath off the top there. It's just an outrageous draw, but it's put him in a position where he can realistically win this game now.
Yeah, this is one of those exact scenarios where you ask people like, "Do you expect to win this tournament?" and they answer, "Well, it's Hearthstone. I don't know."
Right.
Well, you're gonna give that Twilight Guardian taunt somehow.
Okay, yeah. So the tapping into a relevant minion there is hugely important because again, you're asking the question from your opponent. He needs a full board clear here, and asking him to do that again after he's just clearly played a top decked swipe and a top decked Wrath. You know, asking him to clear a 3/7 and a 2/3 again is probably too much. But if he'd have tapped and bricked there, then this game could have turned around really, really quickly. But as it stands, I don't think there's any method of survival for Faeli in hand here.
Yeah, you have to go for the card draw, and not even a Druid of the Claw would actually save you here.
No, because Hellfire would be enough to punch through anyway. So yeah, we're going to be in trouble here. I believe both swipes are gone as well, so that's out. I don't think there's any draws even off the Azure Drake that help him here. I think this is just game one for Weasel.
You probably need some type of like Ancient of War is maybe your only out.
Right. So yeah, I like this play. Just maximize your board presence. You're probably resigned to losing at this point, but make the best play you can that sets you up the best the best option that you have if he doesn't have the options.
Well, there's the Malagos.
All right, we're gonna go for the style option here. Not revealing the rest of the cards in his hand. Plays the top decked Malagos as if he needed it. How do you feel about that as an option, like the potentially put your opponent on tilt by playing the top decked card thing? Do you think that's a real thing?
Yeah, I think you always go for it, especially against a player who's really not used to playing in a tournament in a LAN setting.
Okay.
If you tilt him, I think it's just going to be huge overall.
Okay.
And overall, that game, pretty interesting. I think it was kind of a role reversal between the Druid and the Malagos Warlock. It was always the Malagos Warlock that was putting on the pressure, putting his opponent in like a sort of a combo range, and eventually finishing off with the combo.
Yep, it's a thing we've talked about several times already today. It's just Malagos Warlock is just a really, really effective tempo deck when it wants to be. Like 5-mana Fire Elementals are good cards, Implosions are good cards. Like anything that can reverse the board state like that, remove a minion, play a minion at the same time. Like if you can do that consistently against Druid is going to struggle because they don't have that many cards that can do the reverse, that can remove your stuff while playing their own stuff. They're locked into swiping or wrathing, and then they have to develop a minion with leftover mana, which is much slower. So when you're having a match that's so dependent on tempo, the fact that the other person has so many stronger tempo cards just makes it a struggle to win if you fall behind on the board.
Yeah, not only that, but Malagos Warlock was just so strong before TGT, and I think they just got like the best TGT card almost in the Twilight Guardian.
Right.
So if you just put that in, you make an already strong deck, just put it over the top. And I don't think enough players are actually realizing it just yet. I also do like some of the small changes that Weasel has made to that deck, including adding the 3 drops. I felt like it was one of the areas in which the Malagos Warlock actually lacked in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two most impactful cards from TGT so far, you'd say are Twilight Guardian and Mysterious Challenger. But Twilight Guardian, most people have been playing around with, Priest and Warrior primarily as the Dragon decks. But as you say, Warlock is a real sleeper deck, if you like. It had its moment of being a really top contender deck, but only for a brief window, and then it kind of went away mostly. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Malagos Warlock coming back with a vengeance over the next few weeks.
Yeah, not only that, but Malagos Warlock throughout the whole of Blackrock Mountain. It was actually the second winningest deck of Blackrock Mountain, behind only Hybrid Hunter, which we all know is it's Hunter, right?
Yeah, of course. That's good. We can always rely on Monk for a useful stat every now and again.
Useful?
Right?
That could be argued, right?
Yeah. All right, we can always rely on you for a stat, useful or not. But yeah, that's good to know, actually. Anyway, moving on to the next game now. What do you expect Weasel to go with now that he's eliminated, if you like, his Malagos by winning with it?
Okay, so he has Druid and mid-range Paladin left.
Correct.
Meanwhile, the opposition has mid-range Paladin, Druid, so it's a mirror. And he also has Patron Warrior.
Right.
The Patron Warrior is definitely going to be key because Druid, I think, is going to be favored against Patron Warrior. Paladin, maybe not so much.
Okay, it's interesting to hear you say that you think Druid is favored against Patron Warrior. You're going to give me the stats to back that one up?
I'll give you the stats
Okay.
up. Sure, it's going to actually be 71 to 48 in favor of Druid. That's pretty huge. So that's
outrageous.
That's 60% win rate.
I do not believe you.
I think it does make sense though,
Okay.
since a lot of Druid decks, pretty much every Druid deck these days, they have Harrison Jones.
Sure.
And a lot of Druid decks before TGT, they had Ancient of War.
Mhm.
So those are like 3 tech cards already that are really good against Patron.
Okay.
So maybe like a non-tech deck
Mhm.
would be not so favored against Patron. But because Patron, it seems like so overly centralizing that all other decks have to kind of counter it.
Right.
That's what makes the matchup favored for the Druid player.
Okay, that's interesting. I think like the thing you have to be careful with like stats like that is that they fail to take into account that a lot of people are really bad at Grim Patron. I think Grim Patron played well. I fail to believe it's unfavored against any deck in the game.
I think it's a very valid point.
Yeah.
I think overall Patron is considered the hardest deck to play. Meanwhile, Druid might be considered the easiest deck to play.
Yeah. Anyway, going into game 2, it looks like we are going to see the very matchup that we just spent time talking about. So
that worked out pretty well.
It did. That was excellent. Well done, Monk. We're going to see Druid versus the Patron Warrior. So we'll get to see. I haven't seen Faeli play Patron today, I don't believe. So I'm always a fan of watching Patron Warrior games. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, we saw him playing on the main stream earlier. I believe you were watching this Challenger stream at that time, but he was basically playing against the Mysterious Challenger deck, and unfortunately, like Mysterious Challenger did Mysterious Challenger things, and Patron just really couldn't come back. In fact, in all the games that I've seen between Mysterious Challenger and Patron, the Mysterious Challenger has won in broadcasted games. But I've talked to some players, and they've actually said that the Patron Warrior is actually favored.
Yeah, I believe the Patron.
It makes sense since like it's the Mysterious Challenger Paladin is typically like the standard aggro Paladin,
right?
And the Patron was generally favored against aggro Paladin.
Right. Yeah. When you have so many whirlwind effects in your deck that essentially against aggro Paladin, because of all their minions are like such weenies, like essentially every one of your whirlwinds is a flame strike. Like it's just a board clear, and you get to play like 4 1-mana value flame strikes in your deck, which is just crazy.
We did see before that in that previous game that even though Patron got 3 whirlwind effects, it still lost.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay. Like generally the way I look at that matchup is like as long as you get like Death Spite plus 1 other whirlwind effect, be it an unstable ghoul or an actual vanilla whirlwind, then you're pretty heavily favored to win that game. So I'm really surprised to hear that 3 went off and they still lost. That's crazy.
Back to the matchup at hand though, Patron Warrior against Druid.
Yes.
How do you feel like the changes made in TGT have affected this matchup? Like, I mean, there's the Aspirant, there's the Living Roots, but I feel like those cards might be worse off against Patron Warrior than the cards that they replaced, such as the 2 Ancients of War.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, for the most part, a lot of the time Aspirant just gives a War Axe target on turn 2 for a deck that doesn't really have any. Like you generally even sometimes because of throwing away War Axe as the warrior against Druid, because you get to kill the first half of a Shredder with it, but how good does that feel? Deathspite can do the same job anyway. But War Axe is now like a valid keep to deal with Aspirant, and obviously Living Roots to deal 2 damage gives you more flexibility for killing out a Patron generation turn, because 2 is one of the numbers that you have to do. Generally you have to do 1, 3 twice, and 2 to clear a Patron board. So the Living Roots does a nice job to do the 2, but it's pretty goddamn useless as 1/1s, right? In that matchup, I don't think that's a play you're ever going to make. So. I don't think it's changed the matchup too much. If anything, like you said, they're probably weaker than the cards they've replaced. So,
yeah. Well, that being said, it's all about like how well you can deal with those first initial patrons. I mean, if you don't deal with them really well, the Ancients of War are going to help you on turn 7.
Yeah, precisely. So yeah, Living Roots can be important in that sense, but still, you're asking to have a Keeper of the Grove to silence plus a Wrath plus Hero Power plus Living Roots to get a full clear on the board, which is still a lot to ask, even with the addition of the Living Roots. Azure Drake Innovate Swipe is obviously the cleanest option sometimes, but even then, that can sometimes end up still generating an extra patron off the spare 3 health one.
Yeah,
so.
and that requires you to be at least on turn 6 or 7 if you get a Wild Growth early on with the Innervate.
Yeah. Anyway, looks like we are heading into the game, and I think Mulligan's opening hands here are huge for both players. Honestly, curving out against Druid in this deck is kind of fine. Like, I would keep, for example, Armorsmith, Frothing Berserker, Gnomish Inventor against Druid. I think that's a totally fine hand. But Deathspite Despite Patron in a rage is the other line that you target. So generally with your mulligan, you target one of those lines, either just the play minions and curve out, or the get the turn 5 Patron generation combo. Either of those tend to do pretty well against Druid.
Yeah.
From the Druid's perspective, pretty standard. You're just looking for your ramp cards and potentially Keeper to deal with early Acolyte, or Wrath to do much the same job.
He gets an Ancient of Lore though, or Ancient of War, which not necessarily the best thing, but I guess on turn 7 it could be of some use. I've seen some hybrid lists these days with both the Darnassus Aspirants and Ancient of War. I think Mr. Yagut hit #1 legend with this kind of deck, with 1 Ancient of War, but still 2 Darnassus Aspirants.
All right, that's good to know. Interesting. Yeah, we saw Faeli mulligan away the early minions there and just keep the Grim Patron, so it definitely looks like he's committed. Ooh, welcome to 29, Grim Patron Warrior. I do not like that one bit.
Yeah, it's.
Have we not learned yet that you just don't put them at 29? Are we kidding? Like, what is that play? Come on. He has to be aware this is Patron Warrior, right? Like, what is that 1 damage going to do apart from set him at 29? And now he just gets to happily stack armor at 29 with the Armor Smith. I can't believe people are still doing that as Druid.
Yeah, it's actually quite hotly debated, even in Freeze Mage versus Patron. Would you ping your opponent?
No.
Yeah, that's probably the general consensus.
It doesn't matter as much because, as the Patron in that matchup, I generally play it for fatigue anyway. I'm not trying to kill them, so I'm not going to draw that many cards off Battle Rage. So maybe pinging them to make them draw 1 more card with Battle Rage is actually correct. But it's hard to say because you don't know how your opponent is going to play the matchup. Some Patrons play it aggressively, some of them play it for fatigue. So.
Well, we see a really key card drawn from Faeli. Basically, Inner Rage. Inner Rage, Whirlwind, Patron. That's kind of the dream, especially with the coin.
Yep. So he has Patron generation on turn 5 right now, which is huge for him. Deathbite is the classic option for doing it, but Coin Whirlwind is sort of the backup route. Generally, you do want to be drawing into a Deathbite at some point against Druid anyway, just because it's so efficient at dealing with the minions that they play.
So it's going to be really important for Weasel to somehow set up a board that can deal with that kind of Patron board. So if he has 1 minion on the board, then he can take care of a 3/3 Patron, for example.
Right.
He can hero power down the 5/1 Patron that rolls out, but then he's still going to have another 3/3 and a 3/2.
Yep.
So he needs something like a Keeper plus a Wrath on turn 6, for example.
And Faeli's hand has just worked out really nicely here. Even after mulliganing away so many minions to try and pick up the Patron combo pieces, he ended up picking up the Patron combo pieces and then started to get his minions back as well, which is just really nice.
And look at that, a second Inner Rage. So the situation we were talking about before, it's not going to happen. He's going to have to deal with even more Patrons.
Is he, though? Because that would fill the board completely, which does give your opponent more outs for dealing with the wave with things like Swipe. Whoa, all right. He's actually not going to go with Patrons this turn. It surprises me. So he's going to go with the clearing option here instead. That really surprises me. I feel like just generating a nice fat board of Patrons there was the way forward. But Battle Rage here to draw 3. I guess there's not a great deal wrong with that either. And then he's just going to probably just trade into the Druid of the Claw and retain his Armor Smith on board, keep stacking up the armor. So he can also Shield Slam here and retain the tempo with the 4/3. Looks like he's going to go for that. Interesting to see Shield Slam in his Patron list. Shield Block pretty much has become the standard now, but Shield Slam not so much. Still kind of on the fringes of Patron Warrior builds, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the logic is that if you're running 1 or 2 Shield Slams anyway, and I believe because he's running Shield Slam, he's running 2 Shield Blocks.
Right.
He might as well run Shield Slams.
Right.
It's become standard, and I think it's really good for a lot of reasons. I've noticed since I've been keeping track of stats of all the decks, I've noticed that since Shield Block has been added in, win rates against Rogue, Hunter, and Zoo have actually all increased.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. But now he gets to hold the coin here, do the Patron generation turn we were talking about before, but also the Whirlwind serves the auxiliary purpose of just enabling the really nice trade into the Emperor Thaurissan here. So his line with choosing to hold on to the Patron generation for 1 extra turn has actually paid off pretty nicely here.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, Weasel can actually Azure Drake swipe here, which is really interesting. It's not going to clear off the whole board.
No.
But it's going to take off some of the pressure.
He would be left with a 3/1 and a 3/3 at the end of the turn, but he'll also consolidate a 4/4 on the board, which kind of demands Deathbite from his opponent, so that might end up being the play. He does have other options as well with Keeper of the Grove and Swipe, but I don't think that works out any better. No, Azure Drake and Swipe is the best you can do if you are deciding to go with the removal option, which I think you're kind of forced to facing down this board, right?
Yeah, and a 3/3 Patron and a 3/1 Patron isn't necessarily that scary, since you've already seen one Unstable Ghoul, one Whirlwind, and he's already used double Inner Rage. Cruel Taskmaster really isn't that common these days, unless your name is Pavel.
Yeah, or Zalay, right? Zalay's currently, he's cut the Armor Smiths and is running Cruel Taskmasters in their place, which is very interesting. So many different builds of this deck. It's one of the things that makes it so much fun for me to watch and cast, is that everyone has their own little flavor on it. You know, there's some people even still like playing the really slow list with Loot Hoarders and Grom and stuff. So interesting. Anyway, Deathspite looks pretty juicy here, and he's gonna back it up with the tempo frothing by the looks of things. Because can't really afford to slam Emperor here, because it just, it makes the Azure Drake too powerful on the board. So tempo frothing and then Deathspite down the Azure Drake looks pretty strong to me.
Yeah. There's an option to actually just use another Whirlwind here in order to clear off this Azure Drake, double your patrons, and set up an even stronger board perhaps. And I think he's going to go for that now. Okay,
yeah, I like this play too. All right, he still retains the coin, right? So you can just coin the Deathspite and go face. Yeah, all right, that looks like what he's going to do. Just set up lethal for the following turn.
You can't even Harrison Jones this, because then everything will duplicate.
Right.
Yeah, I like this play a lot, especially since basically you've seen your opponent use a swipe already, so he probably doesn't have. Well, never mind.
Finish your thought, Monk. Go ahead.
So if he had more Emperor Thorstein activations, he'd be able to clear off this entire board. Right now, he can actually BGH the Frothing, so it might have been like a slight misplay to actually get that Frothing to 7 attack range.
Right. Could he have prevented? Yeah, he could have traded the 3/1 Patron into the Drake first, and then played the Frothing afterwards, and then Whirlwinded from there, right? So, it's a difference of 2 though. So he would have had a 5 attack Frothing instead of 7. It's kind of a big deal. I don't know.
Okay, so right here, what about Keeper to silence, Savage Roar to clear off the 3/2, and BGH the Frothing? So you get your opponent is remained with a silenced 3/3 minion.
Yeah, I like that. I'm just looking at options of like Charge Druid of the Claw, but that doesn't leave enough mana flexibility. So yeah, your play looks like the way forward here. Silencing the 3/3, Savage Roar to gain the 2 hero attack and clear off the 3/2, and Big Game Hunter. Yeah, this looks perfect.
Yeah, it's a little awkward, but just judging from the hands, you definitely have a higher quality hand than your opponent, especially against Patron Warrior. Patron Warrior, they actually can't do that much with only 3 or 4 cards in their hand. They rely on a lot of synergies throughout the entire deck to actually do Patron things.
Right, and just going back to the point we talked about on turn 2 about whether or not it was correct to hero power him in the face. If you look at the scenario right now, if he hadn't have hero powered him in the face, then he would have been at 40 health instead of 41. But he would only have 3 cards in his hand right now instead of 4. And like, which of those situations is better?
Well, not only that, but if you give your opponent 1 card, that 1 card tends to kind of snowball.
Right.
Like if he draws into another card that draws a card, and he draws into another Battle Rage. Like this could be just like 2 cards in the hand instead. You just give your opponent slightly better options every single turn for the next 10 or so turns.
Exactly. So he may, second charge of Deathspite is one of the most valuable things in Patron Warrior. So he might be reticent to swing here without getting any sort of serious value out of it. Slam definitely is a good start to preventing him from doing that, but it looks like he is just going to go ahead and swing and just take the board here. Yep. Okay. So he manages to get some Armor Smith value out of it, but no Frothing buff, no Patron generation, so a pretty lackluster second swing of Deathspite as far as Patron Warrior goes. Now, if you're Weasel, how are we looking to address this board? We haven't seen a single execute played from Faeli, right?
Yeah, no executes at all. So he's probably going to be pretty scared to play the Ancient War.
Absolutely.
One play that you could do is you play the Darnassus Aspirant and then Wild Growth to draw a card, and then play the Druid of the Claw.
Yeah, I like that play. You will have spent 8 mana in total, right? So you can still use the hero power to take out the armor smith if you want to do that. But at this point, you're not really concerned about his armor. You're probably just looking to take down the higher threats on the board and take out the 3/2. Yeah, I like that play. Giving yourself 10 mana and then using the wild growth to draw a card. Interesting whether Weasel will see it, because it's not an immediately intuitive play, right?
Yeah, it's also like it's not a play that you know to do unless you've seen it before.
Right. Okay.
The interaction between wild growth and the Darnassus aspirant.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting as well. Do you know that if you cast Ancestral Communion a second time, you actually gain an excess mana card as well?
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's really weird, right? Because it doesn't say, it just says gain 10 mana, so it shouldn't. You're not gaining any excess mana by just gaining 10 mana again. But yeah, very strange.
So he actually played the Darnassus aspirant, but didn't wild growth. Is that just like a strictly worse play?
Yes, because he played the Druid of the Claw first, right, and then. So I think he just missed the opportunity, or he saw the play too late, because once the rope appeared, he probably didn't have time to do the play anyway. So if he'd have seen the play too late or thought about it too long, he may have just not wanted to go for the wild growth for roping reasons.
That's actually going to be pretty relevant, since more likely than not, he'll spend the entire 10 mana here. So he'll have one less option than if he had just used the wild growth in the previous turn. And I guess the benefit is he has one more armor, and his opponent is 1 health lower.
Right. Ancient of War swipe is looking fairly reasonable, but he's kind of a hero power short of a really efficient clear there, I think. So he might be forced to. He played the Druid of the Claw that turn as a tester for execute. So having not seen the execute, do you feel confident enough to slam the Ancient of War this turn?
I think you feel very confident here.
Okay. Okay. All right. So it looks like he's going to trade the 4/6 into the Emperor. Okay. So is he going to go ahead and play Ancient of War now? I assume so, because if he was going to cast Wild Growth, he would have done it first. Yep.
Okay. So this means he values the 2/2 body of the Darnassus aspirant more than the health on the Druid of the Claw.
That's very true. Execute does come into hand, but there's no clean way of proccing it on the Ancient of War here. I don't think you really want to be Warsong Unstable Ghouling here. It's actually not terrible, right? You clear 2 minions with it and retain the 2/2 on the board to compete with his 2/2. You still have the second Warsong in hand, but you're very quickly running out of win conditions if you do that, right? Because you've already used 1 Frothing Berserker, you've seen 1 Whirlwind get used, 1 Deathbite get used. So at that point, do you have enough juice left in the tank to finish the game?
Yeah. There's actually a pretty infamous game of Kalento versus Life Coach in this very similar scenario where one of the players, I forget who, but the Patron player put the Druid player on 1 health, and the Druid player just eventually came back by just putting up a lot of taunts. Then the Patron player just drew out his entire deck, and he eventually lost due to not having enough cards to finish off his opponent.
Right.
And it's just the problem with, if you have this few cards, there's just not really much you can do.
It's going in deep here with the double shade. I think this is fine. He's at a low enough health total here where even having 3 minions on the board is probably enough to activate any lethals if he does have Frothing Berserker combinations. So I don't see too many worlds where the extra 2 minions are going to get you killed in scenarios where you wouldn't have died before. So I'm pretty happy with him just going for the throat here and just trying to end this game in possibly 2 turns if he can. In fact, if he top decks Savage Roar, is this just lethal next turn?
It's almost certainly lethal.
Yeah. So 3, 6, 11, 13, 17 plus 12. You'd have 29. That's actually not enough. 30 with the hero power as well.
Yes. Yeah.
A
bit slower than you, but I did that math.
But it looks like Fiery War Execute is going to be the play here. He's just hoping that he draws into enough combo pieces quickly enough here to get some value on the board. Even Patron here would be a fantastic draw to start generating board presence with the Unstable Ghoul. But
yeah, drawing a Patron the next turn, I think would almost, it wouldn't seal the game, but it would mostly clear the board except for the shades that are still on the board.
Right. So I think you're committed to just attacking with these shades now, right? Like, do they have much more value in stealth than just going in as for the attacks now? I mean, what are they getting removed with?
I guess the worst case scenario is if you on the very next turn, Faeli, he draws Patron, he charges everything in, executes, and then he can actually clear off the 2 shades with the remaining 2 patrons.
Okay.
So it's not the worst play in the world to leave the shades at least cloaked for 1 more turn.
Okay. Does it change the clock? So if he only does 11 this turn instead of 17, his opponent will be at 29 instead of 23. So I think it does actually slow down the clock by 1 turn if you choose not to attack. So I think you have to. I think you do just have to go for it. Oh, that's interesting. The heal he's basically now demanding 2 executes from his opponent if he's going to win the game. I think that's actually a really smart play from Weasel.
Yeah, I completely agree. I didn't see that play at start, but it's really heads up.
Yeah, because the demanding a second execute from your opponent is worth so much more than 5 life right there.
Yeah. Either a second execute or something like 2 frothing berserkers could punch through that.
Right.
We saw a pretty infamous video of Trump dying through 2 5-11 taunts last weekend.
Yeah. Sometimes Patron just does Patron things, but I think we already saw 1 frothing get used this game, right? Because it was BGH'd, the 7-3 frothing, so it would have to be some sort of Warsong plus Patron plus frothing turn to kind of get through all this with enough damage left over for lethal. Interesting. What's happening here?
Well, he has to charge and execute here, I guess.
Yeah.
Then he can clear off at least 1 of the shades. Doesn't feel good though.
No, he can't clear the shades, right? He's already attacked with the weapon on the
that's right.
fight. Yeah, so pretty dire situation, but he was forced into it because of the attacks with the shades, as we said. The clock was accelerated, so he was dead next turn. And the Savage Roar, the top deck is now definitely lethal. There's no reason to do the maths on this one.
Yeah, Weasel still kind of hesitating a bit just to make sure.
But yeah, comfortable 2-0 lead now for Weasel, and I'd have to say he seems to have tightened up his play a lot from the conversation I had with you off stream, where he made some mistakes in his first off stream game. Not only is he now not making mistakes, he's also seeing those counterintuitive plays like healing the 4/6 Druid of the Claw there to add the extra insurance against the executes.
Yeah, definitely very impressed here, but you know what? His final deck is going to be mid-range Paladin, and that's a deck we haven't really seen much success of in this tournament. I believe pretty much every mid-range Paladin has lost their games.
Is that so? Okay. And straight away, mid-range Paladin into Patron is not a matchup that you're happy about. He's also going to have the mid-pally Mirror, and he's going to have mid-pally into Druid, which is a matchup I spoke with Nimsh about at some length, mid-range Pally versus Druid, and we kind of concluded it's a fairly 50-50 matchup because it comes down to really specific interactions between particular cards and basically who has the right cards at the right time.
Exactly. I have to agree with that as well. I think a lot of players would argue that it's actually Paladin favored.
Okay.
But I think ever since Emperor Thorzane came out, it's Druid that's become much more aggressive. And the stats really back that up. Mid-range Druid versus Paladin is almost a 50% matchup. It's 27-26 in favor of the Paladin.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we might as well call that 50-50, right? Over that sort of sample size, that there is no difference between 27-26 and 27-27, right? So, very, very interesting set of matchups upcoming, because he has 2 matchups that are almost like one matchup that's certainly a 50-50 because it's a mirror, one matchup that we are calling a 50-50, and then one matchup that's unfavored. So even being 2-0 up, he's not in an astronomically high win rate percentage to win the set overall, just because he doesn't have a favored matchup left to win with the deck. So it's entirely possible that he can lose 3 games with his mid-range Paladin here.
Yeah, so if you just take account the mid-range Paladin against, he has to not lose to both the Druid and the mid-range Paladin. It's already a 75% win rate. And then if you count the Patron, I guess the Patron, like let's say it's 60% favored against, or 70% favored even. So that's something like an 80-85% win rate for Weasel throughout the rest of the series. So very unlikely for him to lose at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's actually I think probably Faeli will pick the Patron just to get more airtime, just to have the best chances of winning, and also to get his confidence up. You just want to win that first game because you are down 0-2.
Yeah.
And if you go for that, let's look at the matchups there. It's going to be Patron is pretty favored against mid-range Paladin. It's going to be, checking my stats here, it's going to be 17-9, so 65%.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But there's a lot of valid reasons to go with your strongest matchup first in this situation. Like you said, just more airtime, bit of momentum, and also you're using your best deck to gather more information about tech cards and things, and then you can use that information to improve your win rate with the weaker decks afterwards. So I'm definitely a big fan of leading with your strongest deck in this situation, where some people do take the mentality of, well, I have to win with them all anyway. Like, what does it matter?
There are pretty key tech cards in mid-range Paladin that you might want to know.
Right.
Like Defender of Argus, I think, is a big one.
Yep.
Cog Hammer, perhaps.
yep.
Blessing of Kings, and maybe even the Justicar Trueheart, perhaps.
Sure.
In really long macro games, even.
Right. It's a really, like, mid-range Paladin is quite set in terms of 26 or 27 cards, but then there's like 3 to 4 really heavily floating spots that, they can be Coghammer, they can be Acolyte of Pain, they can be Blessing of Kings, they can be Justicar Trueheart, Tuskar Jouster, Harrison Jones, Loatheb. Like, there's so many cards that you can fit into some of those slots that it's a really flexible deck that you can really, tech to try and grab that extra 2 to 3% against certain matchups in tournament.
Well, not only that, but we just had a new expansion release, so it's even more variability.
Yes, absolutely. The Silverhand Regent Justicar Trueheart double Quartermaster deck is real. Like, that is a thing that's out there in terms of mid-range Paladin deck. Just flooding the board with Murloc Knights and Silverhand Regents, and then crushing the opponent with Quartermaster as your Savage Roar, if you like. That's an interesting deck that I have seen a little bit on ladder, but very quickly all Paladins became Mysterious Challenger Paladins on ladder. So just looks like we're having a little bit of problem here with the players in the challenge screen. Not sure quite what's going on, but looks like they are now ready to get into the game, and we are going to have mid-range Paladin against, as we suspected, Patron Warrior.
Pretty serendipitous that we're talking about the exact matchup that they decided to play. But it does make a lot of sense, as we talked about before.
Yep. So you say 65% favored for the Patron?
Yes.
It sounds about right to me. Yeah, I think people throw around big numbers a bit too much in Hearthstone.
Completely agree.
They say, decks are 70% favored, 80% favored. It's like, that's really, really bad.
I find it's especially true from the specialists. Like, you have these rogue specialists that will say, like, no, rogue is 90% against this deck.
Yeah. I was like, no, it isn't. Like, sure, it might be for you because you're incredibly good, and on average you're playing against people worse than you. But if you track general stats, there are very few decks that are much more than 65% favored against anything else.
We're going to the first game, and I actually think that post-TGT, Paladin might have gotten even a bit weaker against Patron Warrior, because before, one of the biggest innovations from players like Silent Storm was he cut the Quartermasters and he put in 2 Blessing of Kings to make it an even more aggressive deck in order just to counter the Patron Warriors. In fact, Silent Storm, he got rank 1 in NA in a metagame filled and infested with Patron Warriors with that mid-range Paladin.
Wow, that's impressive. But we see a pretty perfect curve here from Weasel. Zombie Chow, Minibot, Muster into True Silver. That's basically the dream draw in almost any matchup for mid-range Paladin. And he has the insurance policy of turn 2 Minibot against Warrior is scary because of the Acolyte, but then if you have the coin True Silver as the insurance policy, it suddenly becomes a lot more appealing.
Yeah.
The only problem with the coin True Silver here is that it kind of locks out his Muster for battle a little bit if he doesn't want to swing his True Silver next turn.
I think both players have gotten just amazing hands. Fireworks into Acolyte, he has the option to slam or No Mission Venture on the next turn. Usually the shielded Minibot is a huge problem for the Warrior. Usually you have to attack it twice, but you have the option of slam, you have the option to maybe even kill it off with the Acolyte. So really amazing here.
Sure.
Forcing the Paladin to even play off curve.
Yeah, because No Mission Venture into the True Silver doesn't feel great, but I think, like, for the most part, the correct way to play this matchup is just generally kind of ignore what your opponent's doing. I mean, ignore's not the right word, but, like, basically, like, don't make yourself care about the fact that he's going to True Silver your Gnomish Inventor and gain an advantage. Just keep cycling through your deck. Because if you draw your deck, you are going to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, he just goes ahead and plays the Gnomish. I think this is absolutely the right play here. Just suck it up, accept that it's going to get True Silver, and just keep digging for your combo pieces.
Yeah, you sort of have to give up board advantage here, because if you ever get that combo on turn 8 or even earlier with the Emperor, then you're probably just going to win the game straight up.
Yeah, I mean, almost no Paladin decks are playing 2 copies of Equality anymore, so, you know, you're asking for the 1 copy of Equality to be in your opponent's hand, plus Consecrate, and then even then, you know, they're going to spend their whole turn doing that, and you just get to retake the initiative the next turn if you want to, which, you know, initiative in terms of Patron Warrior is just freedom to draw more cards if I want to, but that's generally fine and, you know, a worthwhile outcome, so... All right, Shield Slam comes into the hand. Probably going to end up just swinging the War Axe here at the mini-bot that he cleared the shield off, but he might be debating the tempo frothing here. How do you feel about how valuable frothing is as a bursty win condition in this matchup?
I think mainly your win condition is going to be your patrons, but it's unlike against Druid, where if you get a board filled with patrons, there's almost no way he can kill it off. He does, like you said, have that one option of quality, but it's like that one of that's their only out.
So he does have the Muster for Battle option here to clear the Frothing Berserker. And he can attack with the weapon first to only take 3 damage, because the Divine Shield makes it, you know, completely irrelevant how much damage the mini-bot takes. So it's quite happy attacking last. But at that point, you are extremely exposed to, you know, lovely things that are in warrior decks like Whirlwinds. So interesting to see what he goes for here.
I think Faeli, he decided to play that tempo frothing here mainly because he saw his hand is like very situational, and there's a heavy possibility that he actually doesn't have a great move on the following turn. So he might as well just throw this Frothing Berserker out there to prevent some damage, to prevent some development. Whereas he might just have to do it later on, where it'd be in a much worse position.
Right, I like it. Just going back to the top deck thing that we talked about earlier, where like playing the card you drew for lethal to tilt your opponent is kind of a thing. I actually kind of disagree with him playing the Muster for Battle that he top decked there. Because, you know, by something that you did during the game, you know, maybe you, on turn 3, you moused over that Muster for Battle that you already have, and your opponent went, okay, that might be Muster for Battle. So by playing the one he top decked and leaving that one in his hand, you can give your opponent a read on one of your cards. Whereas by playing the one that's already in your hand, there's no possible way your opponent can have a read on the card that you just top decked. So you have guaranteed concealed information. It's a really minor thing, but it's something that I've been working on a lot, which is always to play like the oldest copy of a card in my hand.
That's a very good point. Speaking from a true tournament performer like yourself.
Anyway, where are we? We see one Whirlwind being used to clear. I think that was a Murloc Knight that just came into... Yeah, perfect turn 6 draw here for Weasel. Picks up the Murloc Knight, hero power, immediately huge amounts of pressure onto the board. All right, I mean...
small amounts of pressure on the board.
Yeah, fine. So, you know, one of the worst outcomes. Debatable whether or not that's better than Murloc Raider, but either way, it's definitely in the bottom tier of outcomes from Murloc Knight. But still, a pretty important top deck just to even get the amount of pressure that he got there that turn. Otherwise, he's kind of locked into just replaying Muster, I guess.
Yeah. So, again, a very key draw from Faeli. He now knows that he's going to, unless like a huge taunt comes up on the next turn, there's going to be really fun times with the Grim Patron.
Yep. And just like the amount of respect being shown to Murloc Knight there. I mean, like you said, he can afford to make that play because... he knows that next turn he probably wins the game, so he can afford to use all his resources to remove a 3/4 this turn if he wants to. But, you know, just the amount of respect being shown to just an innocuous-looking 3/4 Murloc suddenly just is worth 2 premium removal spells.
Is this the fishing tournament?
Alright, not a hugely relevant joust to win, but obviously the extra health is nice.
Yeah.
And I like him playing the 5/5 here as opposed to... you know, going for the insane value with the Muster for Battle, because you're asking your opponent to have Inner Rage here in order to clear up the extra 5/5 as well. Unfortunately for Weasel, we see that Faeli does have the Inner Rage as well, so things are not going to go well for him this turn.
Yeah, and this honestly just might be game over. I don't want to call it too early, but the problem is you need both Equality and Consecrate to clear this type of board. And as we can see, there's only an option to draw one of them on the next turn. The best he can do is drop Tyrion, but that gets answered also with the help of like a Slam plus crashing some Patrons in.
It's actually enough just to draw Consecration because he has the Owl in hand. In fact, yeah, the way the board's been traded. Wait, was that right? I feel like he should have retained a 3/3 that turn. No, that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah, so you know, it's just he doesn't even need the Owl. It's just enough to draw Consecration here. So Faeli's actually pretty lucky that Weasel doesn't even have a copy of Consecrate in his hand this deep into his deck. Obviously playing 2 of them and doesn't even have the first one yet.
Yeah. So what you can do, not playing Tyrion, but you can just play Muster for Battle and Quartermaster. And basically, because your opponent doesn't have any 3/3 patrons, he can just you can just like rely on the Quartermastered minions to kill off the patrons in the next turn. This is going to be slightly weak to maybe a second patron.
Sure.
I'm not sure you can play around that.
No, I don't think so. I think at some point you have to assume your opponent doesn't have it all. And yeah, this is actually kind of an awkward position for Faeli.
So what you can do here is you slam, draw into a Fiery War Axe, equip the Death Spite, attack with the Death Spite, override your Death Spite with a Fiery War Axe, and get more patrons.
Sure, let's do that. Let's draw exactly Fiery War Axe. He already did use one to kill the mini-bots, and most lists are only running one Fiery War Axe these days, so he may not even have the second Fiery War Axe in the deck. But yeah, I think getting Whirlwind or second Fiery War Axe is
I think
big.
by slamming this minion, he's saying that I am playing towards that Fiery War Axe out.
It could also just be Whirlwind though, right?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, because now Gnomish can just draw the Whirlwind as well. Nope. Alright, so a little bit awkward, but he's going to go ahead and buff up his Frothing Berserker, which is probably going to be answered by the Owl this turn. And we're back in that position where he's kind of fairly quickly running out of win conditions, right? Once this Frothing Berserker has been owled, that's both Frothings gone, one set of Patrons gone, and one Warsong gone. So we're in the position where his deck is actually pretty threat light at this point. And Pilot Shredder is a nice draw to pick up just to create a bit more pressure on the board. Yeah. Because I don't think there's any way you can afford to play Tyrion here. Has he seen an Execute yet this game? I don't think he has, right?
No, I don't believe.
Oh no, there was Shield Slam Execute on the Murloc Knight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Murloc Knight, such an inconspicuous minion.
Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking, have any big minions been played this game yet? And like, I don't think so.
Yeah, Murloc Knight has to count, unfortunately. I think that card is just insane. I mean. Like, cards on the table, honestly, did you predict that card being good when the set was released?
No, certainly not.
No.
I don't think, like... It seems to be, in retrospect, it's a card that, like, it's obviously going to be good if you just, like, count the stats.
Yeah.
But I think people were just blinded by the fact that it said Murloc on it.
Murloc, Paladin, bad card.
Yeah.
Move on. So, yeah, it looks like weapon down the 2-1 here, owling the Frothing Berserker and just developing Shredder and Hero Power is. Oh no, he's gonna go for the Patron for Tyrion here and just say to your opponent, do you have the necessary answers in those 3 cards? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Yes, I do. Oh, hi.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's probably going to have to give up his Warsong Commander this turn.
Yeah, he is. He can't even afford to shield block to draw another answer, because if he bricks, like second Inner Rage would be the perfect draw here, but if he bricks on it, then he doesn't even have enough mana to left over to execute. So he is forced to give up his Warsong Commander here. Unless in some insane world he values the Warsong Commander over the 11-2, which I don't think is a thing. Sorry, the 13-2.
Of course. Alright, so he gets punished for playing the Tyrion here. The other problem is also, even though he has like this huge big weapon, I was going to say he doesn't have enough health to use it, but never mind here.
Yeah, Leon Hands is a pretty solid draw. The fact that he's owling first is interesting. Okay, no, Leon Hands is going to be cast. I mean, I guess there is nothing else he was going to draw for 2 mana that he was going to play instead of Owl, but, you know, just for the sake of proper sequencing, it was probably better to Leon Hands first, though. And so here we are, back in this situation where the deck is just pretty light on threats.
Yeah, light on threats, but I think if you had to choose any cards that would be in your hand, these would be it.
Yeah, they're pretty good. So what's the draw here? All right, Unstable Ghoul. We like it.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty good card right now.
So again, a quality Consecrate is what's needed, or maybe an Owl Consecrate.
And again, he has no way of drawing 2 cards this turn, so I think this will be the beginning of the end in Game 3 for Weasel, and we will not see a 3-0 blowout this game, and we're gonna continue a bit deeper into the potential Paladin mirror matches and Paladin versus Druid, the coin flip games, if you like, that can go either way.
Well, now that I've seen so many cards of this list, 2 Sludge Belchers, Dr. Boom, the Murloc Dice, I think this is actually the exact list that Tom used in the ONOG qualifier.
Okay.
Or the ONOG tournament in which he won. So it's quite likely that Weasel just net decked that deck, since it's a winning tournament deck. And it's actually been the only tournament that has used TGT cards.
Okay, that's good to know. So yeah, I mean, every play that Weasel can possibly make here looks kind of miserable. He's going to try and find what seems like the best line in his mind, but honestly, the best line might just be concede at this point. Just for the sake of concealing information about your Paladin deck, because you know you've instantly conceded the information here that you play 2 Belchers, which is not a given anymore with things like Tuskar Jouster and stuff in the deck. So, is that enough? We shield block first, surely. You can draw Warsong Commander. What? Hello? No? Alright, fine.
Okay.
Alright, apparently we don't need Warsong Commander. Oh, look at that! Wow, it sure would be nice if those extra patrons were charging right now, huh? Why are you playing it now? What have you done? What have you done with your life?
He's questioning all the decisions he's made throughout his entire life.
Oh my god, like the level of mess he has made of this turn. Unfortunately, again, like, oh my, all right, fine. Okay, guys, I quit Hearthstone forever. This is not fair.
I think you have to play the Unstable Ghoul here to protect the Warsong Commander.
Right. Faeli disagrees. Faeli's just going to make sure he played that turn as badly as possible, and not make the correct play at the end either. So he's going to lose his second Warsong Commander here, which actually gives Weasel, you know, survivability as an out here. Like, he can actually, if he's able to deal with this board, then the deck is out of damage, because the Frothings have gone, and nothing can be charged at his face anymore, so the damage...
You can look at his face.
Yeah, Faeli, I mean, I gave him a hard time, but he knows just how bad that turn was. He doesn't need telling. But yeah, so, like, survivability is definitely an out here, because I think there's, like, literally 1 Death Spite left now, right, in terms of damage that can go face left in the deck, so... He actually has a realistic prospect, but again, the lack of Consecrate is just such a serious issue right now. Interesting.
So he has to hope for a charging Murloc?
Yeah.
Reporting for duty.
Nope.
Okay.
So... Well, I mean, it's a 5-5, but it's not a lot more than that at this point. 5-5 is pretty good here, though. Is there a way to engineer this? No, he can only do 9 to face, right? Because the ghoul cannot be detonated before clearing the taunts.
Yeah, and you mentioned that survivability is an out for Weasel, but the problem here is now Faeli has both the Unstable Ghoul and the Armor Smith,
right,
which lets him survive throughout this onslaught of just mini weenies.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Faeli can just deal with these with the patrons, so it's going to be really hard here for Weasel to ever come back in this game. He needs like, what's that card called? Solemn Vigil into Consecrate into Equality, basically.
Right, yeah. Whoa. trading.
That could have gone pretty horribly if something like a Nortron came out.
Again, this cannot be right. You're just giving the opponent so many outs here. He can just trade into one Patron and then play Consecrate and start to clear your board. Like, he doesn't even need a quality anymore. Just Consecrate is good enough. You trade into 1/3/3, you fill up the board, you Consecrate, and then you trade the rest of the minions off. Like, this Faeli is trying really hard to lose this game, but Patron is so good that it just won't let him.
I think sometimes, like, when you make these kind of mistakes on one turn, your mind just like shuts down.
Absolutely. But I mean, how sick must Weasel feel here, though? Like, he can definitely see from his side, even without the perfect information that we have, that these turns can't be right that his opponent is doing, and he's giving him the outs, which is just have Consecrate in your hand, and he's, I don't know, halfway through his deck, over halfway through his deck, still no copy of Consecrate. Pretty ridiculous. Hey, a 2/5.
Okay.
Just what I always wanted against Grim Patrons. He has to Tree Silver here, right? Even that's not enough. Yeah, so he just loses here, right? No way of killing the Shredder to even try and YOLO a taunt, so I believe that's just game, yeah. What an outrageous game of Hearthstone, Monk.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Grim Patron won yet again. It did some Grim Patron things, even though the patrons didn't necessarily have charge.
Yeah.
That single turn.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna recover.
We will, yeah. Yeah, things happened in that game, guys. Yeah, I mean, we're having a bit of fun at Faeli's expense, but we're not telling him anything he doesn't already know, right? Like he doesn't need telling that the plays were wrong that turn, and I believe because this was game 3, there will eventually be a short break that he can use to recover and just recollect his thoughts, which he will probably need to do. But yeah, we see him there, head in his hands, laughing to himself. He knows he came really, really close to just, outright bombing the series there, and he was lucky enough that the draws just didn't line up for Weasel to punish him.
Yeah. A bit unfortunate for Weasel. Like you said, I think Weasel could see that there were misplays, and you typically don't see that kind of play beyond like a rank 5 player. But sometimes, tournament setting, a lot of players get nervous, especially with Patron Warrior.
Yeah.
We've even seen very experienced Patron Warriors, like Zalea, for example, make a few flubs in high pressure situations like the Archon Team League.
Yeah, absolutely. And the booth, the booths here at Gfinity are such a foreign environment. Most LANs you go to, you are still just kind of sat at a computer. There's a crowd and you have another person, within eye distance. But this isolation in the booth is something that no Hearthstone player is really used to unless they have come to a Gfinity or a couple of other very specific events that run it in this sort of style.
Not only that, but you have a ref overlooking you the entire time.
Yeah.
I hear the temperature is slightly different inside the booths even.
Yeah. There's the temperature's regulated. I'm not sure if they're using the white noise this time, but at past events they've also pumped white noise into the booths, which can be quite overwhelming if you're not used to white noise as well. So there's a lot of things going on to deal with that, like just sitting in your home, sitting in your bedroom at home. It's just not the same feeling at all. So
yeah. So Weasel's going to be up 2-1, and we're going to go into a short break. But right after that, we're going to continue the series, and we're going to see if Weasel can finally close it out in 2 kind of mirror matchups. to the deciding match of Group A of the Gfinity Summer Masters #2. We have Faeli versus Weasel, and I think both players, they needed kind of a break after the first 3 games.
Right, yeah, the kind of enforced break in the set there has come at a nice breaking point for both players. I think they'll both want to compose themselves after that game for very different reasons, but break probably hugely appreciated by both of them at this point.
Yeah, Faeli, obviously he made some misplays, to say the least, in the past few games, or
You
at
could
least
say
the
that,
past
yeah.
game.
Yeah. Yeah, and it depends. Like, the break could work both ways for him here. Like, it depends on how he is as a person and as a personality. Like, he can use that 3 or 4 minutes to, really, give himself a slap in the face and say, all right, come on, you're better than this. Let's tighten it up and come back and win this series. Or he may have just sat there for 3 minutes and just dwelled on it and gone, oh God, what did I do? Which will just lead to a downward spiral from there. Like, you talked about it in terms of consecutive plays, where like you make one play that was bad and then you follow it up with another one because you're too busy thinking about the last one.
Yeah.
But if you don't really get a handle on it, that can actually occur in consecutive games, and you actually just put yourself on tilt and play consecutive games badly for the same reasons.
Yeah, it's a lot like life in a way, in that, I'm going to bring
All
it
right,
there.
I'm ready for this one, Monk.
So if you get knocked down, do you just stay down, or do you rise to the occasion and become even better?
I like it.
Self-improvement.
All right, let's go with that. So Faeli has been knocked down in that last game, but he needs to dig himself back up. It's crazy, right? Because we're talking about...
Because he won.
Yeah, we're talking about how, he's the one that needs to recover, but he's actually the winning player here, and it's one of those like unique dynamics of Hearthstone, I guess, that you don't really see in other games, and you can frame it in a negative sense that the better player does not always win games in Hearthstone, or wins games with less consistency than other games, but it does, on the plus side, create these sort of emotional roller coasters for players. Just the level of variance in the game. So.
Yeah, it definitely creates some storylines.
Right.
And again, not only did Faeli misplay a bit, but he also was playing the deck that was favored against his opponent. Whereas in the next 2 matches, at least, it's going to be at least 50-50.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I guess if he was going to misplay, he's done it in the right game, because he did it in the game that he had that 15% win rate buffer, if you like, where we talked about the win rates beforehand. But if you're that heavily favored, and make no mistake about it, 65% is a hugely favored matchup. Then you can afford to make 1 or 2 suboptimal plays, let's call them, and still come out on top, which is what we saw happen there. But anyway, moving forward, we are going to be seeing the mid-range Paladin, of course, from Weasel side, and Faeli is going to go with the mid-range Druid, so he's going to leave the Paladin mirror for last.
Yeah, I think that makes quite a bit of sense. You want to play those matchups where I think like skill might determine more of a factor, be more of a factor, whereas in the Paladin mirror, it's often about like who can stabilize in the early few turns.
Right.
Like Zombie Chow into the Shield mini bot, especially into Muster for Battle. If you don't have anything to come back from that, like a Consecrate, then you can just lose the game right there and then. You really don't get to draw the game out where skill really matters.
Sure, and that's an interesting concept of Hearthstone in general, that some players believe quite heavily that the more skilled player will win a 20-turn control versus control matchup more often than the more skilled player will win a 7-turn aggro versus aggro matchup, just because over 20 turns there are more decisions that are made, which then breaks the ties between who is the better player, because more correct decisions add up to more of an advantage over a greater time. Which is an interesting concept. That's not to say, oh, aggro, no skill, brain dead deck, just hit face. It's just an interesting thought of the longevity of Hearthstone games, kind of compounding on skill discrepancies.
I think one player that really adheres to that mantra is Life Coach.
Yeah.
I've asked him before, like, why do you play mid-range Hunter while most players agree that Hybrid Hunter is sort of the stronger archetype? And his response to me was basically that typically mid-range Hunter games last slightly longer than Hybrid Hunter games, so you have more chances to make the correct decision in those particular games.
Yeah, no surprise at all to hear Life Coach subscribes to that line of thinking, because he's always, I've never seen him really play particularly outright quick decks. I very rarely see him play Zoo. His Hunters are always mid-range, and even his mid-range Paladin is, it's playing
Control Paladin,
right,
basically.
exactly. Like you call it mid-range because he's still only playing 1 equality, I guess, is like the defining thing. But he's playing like double piloted Sky Golem and Kel'Thuzad. And
His
stuff.
fastest deck might just be his mid-range Druid.
Right.
And he's been known for playing Nourish back in the day
yeah.
in mid-range Druid, which is like the slowest card you could think of.
Absolutely. So yeah, it looks like the players are taking a few extra moments to compose themselves here, which is hardly surprising after what we've just seen. We've talked about how Pally versus Druid is a 50-50 matchup because of key interactions between cards. What are some of those key interactions that we need to look out for?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest cards in the Paladin versus Druid mirror is Aldor Peacekeeper. It's such a strong tempo swing in the favor of Paladin, but sometimes you just really don't draw it.
Right.
Another key card is True Silver Champion. The ability to weapon down your opponent's minions. It's often a 2-for-1, but again, the swing card Harrison Jones, if that comes on board, it just swings the matchup again towards the other player.
Right, and it's kind of just like pairs of cards throughout the game, right? It's like they play their first Shredder. Do you have the Aldor to neutralize it? You play your True Silver. Do they have the Harrison to answer it? You play Muster for Battle. Do they have the Swipe to prevent the Quartermaster? Like there's just all these individual interactions between two cards. And it's so 50-50 on like which deck is asking the question and which deck needs to have the answer, and that's what makes the matchup play out as 50-50 in the long run.
One of the reasons I like the matchup is that Paladin is like one of the only decks that can really compete with a Druid that draws Wild Growth early on and like innervates out a lot of stuff, just because True Silver is really strong. Aldor can be really strong against an innervate play or even a Wild Growth play.
Right. Yeah, there's Aldor and like Sap, I guess, are the only clean answers in the game to innovated minions. Otherwise, it's very rare that you get to deal with an innovated minion on the turn that it's played. If you're just sitting there as a regular mortal that only has as much mana as they allow you on one turn.
Yeah, I could suggest Hex as well. But we all know that Shaman still isn't really a class.
Right, yeah. Like, how did that happen, right? We all sat around just like, oh my god, like, finally, Shaman is becoming a thing. It just didn't happen. It's just still not very good. What do we need to give Shaman? Do we have to give them a 6/6 they can play on turn 2 for it to be good?
Yeah, basically, draw all your Overlord cards in your deck and then play them all.
Right, yeah. Sure. I really want to make a Malagos Shaman good. That deck's so close now because of the healing wave thing. You can heal for 14 so consistently. Yeah, and elemental destruction plus lava shock is just so broken as well. But yeah, it's still just not a good deck. Anyway, looks like we have finally entered into our game 4, and it is, as we've discussed at length, Paladin versus Druid here. And we do see the turn 1 Zombie Chow from Weasel, which you'll be happy to have. True Silver Champion, great card as well. From Faeli's side, as the Druid, not too many great options. Just probably going to throw away the entire hand and look for the ramp here.
Yeah. Faeli, he's playing the Ancient of War, which is strong against a lot of matchups, but I feel it's not that great against Paladin, which oftentimes it has those key Aldors. It has even Ironbeak Owl to deal with that Ancient of War.
Right.
On the other hand, Darnassus Aspirant, I think, is going to be really good against Paladin because they typically actually can't kill it on turn 2.
They cannot deal with the 2/3 on turn 2. Yeah, it's one of the things that you just are aware of with Paladin. You don't have to protect your early game minions as you...
Oh!
And clearly the break was not long enough. Weasel immediately... That was just a straight-up misclick, by the way. He was just trying to pick up the Zombie Chow, but as the Quartermaster came into his hand, it slid the positioning of the cards, and he picked up the coin instead. So he now has the decision of whether to play, quote, on curve and hero power, or just play the more powerful 2/3 this turn.
Well, the issue is, if you play the Silverhand Recruit this turn, you're committing to also playing a Silverhand Recruit on turn 2.
And then your turn 3 is Silverhand Recruit plus Zombie Chow. Wow, Acidic Swampoos. I have not seen that come out of Faeli's deck. Although saying that, have I seen Faeli play Druid yet today? I don't believe I have. All right, that would explain why I haven't seen it. But Acidic Swampoos, very, very interesting card. Be interesting to see if he's gone for like the full anti-Patron build of this. Because there was a Druid build flying around for a while that played Ooze and Harrison and Mind Control tech, and it's still probably lost to Grim Patron. So yeah, we see the hero power come out again here on turn 2, so it looks like we are going to go with the slow development play after throwing away the coin, but just a really unfortunate misclick. Who knew execution was a thing in Hearthstone, Monk?
Oh yeah, you need the that really important APM. Imagine if Weasel had not threw the coin away, basically. Like, Faeli's hand is pretty terrible, I'd say, except for that ooze.
Yeah. All right. Oh, hello. I think we stick with the plan, right? Zombie Chow Hero Power. I kind of like it. Like, don't give him the option to swipe, I guess.
Yeah. Don't give him, like, if he doesn't swipe this, how bad do you feel about just mustering for battle, having the quartermaster on turn 4, but not just throwing away your coin right there?
Yeah, that would be horrible. Yeah, but it looks like Zombie Chow Hero Power is going to be the play. But generally, it might be hard for Weasel to like deduce the right plays in this situation, because if he's one of those like learn from experience type guys, he's never going to have been in this situation where he coined Hero Power turn 1 with a Zombie Chow in his hand before. Like this, he would never have had this situation come up before. So he's just having to reason things out turn by turn at this point. Innovate Emperor, always a pretty solid play. Drastically reduces the cost of his hand. 3 mana swipe now is actually a relatively high tempo play against something like Muster for Battle, as opposed to just a back foot kind of play.
Yeah, especially with that Azure Drake. And I think because he has both Azure Drake and swipe in his hand, he's going to be even more likely to just keep on to those cards for that huge tempo swing.
Right. So we are probably going to see the ooze come down here, and it looks like he is just going to opt for mana efficiency here and play the 4 mana Drake over the 3 mana Shredder. You know, even though for 3 mana he was actually getting a more powerful minion in the form of his Shredder, but he's just valuing mana efficiency because next turn, you know, he's able to fit in Shredder with other options, whereas Drake would have been more expensive.
Also, because he's seen a True Silver, I think he thinks it's less likely for a second True Silver to come out. That means that this Azure Drake will probably stay on board, so that swipe will be really valuable to deal with an expected Tusker Jouster or a Sledge Belcher, for instance.
Right. From Weasel's side here, he has the option to just True Silver down the Azure Drake and trade, which kind of it looks like you're giving up board initiative, but you do retain a True Silver, which is some semblance of board presence. Or there's alternative plays with just playing Sludge Belcher. He could go for Knife Juggler Muster for Battle and try and clear the board that way while generating a board presence. There's a lot of lines to go down. The Knife Juggler Muster is pretty risky because of how badly you get wrecked by swipe. I wouldn't hate to see the True Silver play here, but he might be ruling it out as too slow and just going with the development plan instead.
This development plan is okay since you more likely than not expect your opponent to trade in the Azure Drake into the Belcher and then perhaps Hero Power. Then you can clear that off with a follow-up Knife Juggler Muster or just a plain Muster for Battle.
Sure. He may even be considering holding the Muster for Battle all the way to Quartermaster at this point, because he's not even that far away. If he can sneak another extra couple of 1/1s onto the board at some point, which it's gonna be harder than it sounds, but a possibility. If he can manage to do that, then he gets a pretty explosive turn 8. Generally, like that board presence with the 3/3s and the 2/5, it's like the exact nightmare shape for Druid, right? Like they just have no way of doing that. Even spell power swipe, like it just doesn't. That board doesn't care about spell power swipe. So the Muster Quartermaster thing, if you have time to do it against Druid, is just often really game winning.
Yeah. Unless you're against Hoi, in which he just kills you at 8 mana.
Yes. Yeah, and that lethal was really easy to spot, right? And no one possibly missed that.
I was sitting with like all the players, and I don't think anyone actually caught that.
Oh, really?
Until Hoi went like, he did his emote, and everyone's like, wait. Wait. So this is kind of a... Weasel was setting up. So he expects the Ancient of Lore to trade into the Belcher, then he can trade it off with the mini bot.
The question is that going to happen? I mean, you have options to prevent that from happening with things like Keeper of the Grove and Wrath, but honestly, is it
worth it? Basically?
Right? Isn't it just fine to just take the trade and just play another Ancient of Lore and keep going? Like, it seems fine to me.
What to do?
It's just a matter of whether he wants to protect the value of that 5/5 that he has. But yeah, it looks like he's just going to go ahead and draw cards. So he kind of has innovate options here anyway. Although it would have to be pretty spectacular chain of draws to change the play. But
And not only that, but Swipe is just really valuable in the matchup anyway, that you want to save it for the muster for battle that's sure to come up sometime.
Sure. Wait, what? What? What possible benefit is there to not attacking? I don't understand.
So if all goes according to plan, I guess he saves 1 damage.
Sure.
To the face.
Right.
Since that slime won't get to attack.
Sure. But Aldor Peacekeeper. I don't know. I mean, that seems strange. I mean, I imagine the trade will just happen anyway. Just because of how strange that play is, I think Weasel is forced to just go, okay, something fishy's happening here. I'm just going to make the trade to be safe. But the risk of Aldor Peacekeeper is pretty huge here, right?
I think, though, if Aldor Peacekeeper was in Weasel's repertoire the previous turn, he might have used it.
Sure.
And that might be Faeli's logic. But the problem there is, like, you're only saving 1 damage to face against a deck that typically doesn't do a lot of burst damage anyway.
Right.
It's a deck that kind of grinds you out. But you know what? His play did save him 1 damage.
Yes. Yeah, it did actually. It also reduced the odds of Knife Juggler. Weirdly enough, really strange play. I'll be interested to see if like the analysts break that one down a bit more. But I'm struggling to see the relative merits of attacking or not attacking there from either side. But
well, actually, now that I think about it, he didn't save that 1 damage because the Knife Juggler procced 1 more hit to the face.
What?
Sure. Yeah,
from
that's
the Sludge
true.
Belcher.
That's true. Yeah.
So it ended up not mattering at all.
Right. Anyway, he has the board here, and if he has the board still next turn, and he adds Muster Quartermaster to this board, it's pretty hard to see how this goes wrong.
Yeah.
Sylvanas coming down, Wrath to clear out the Knife Juggler. I think you can still just go ahead and Muster Quarter this board, right? Are you that scared of Sylvanas? I don't think so.
Yeah. Plus, Muster is one of the perfect answers for Muster for Sylvanas.
Right.
You build up a lot of minions on the board. You don't care too much if he steals a 3/3 even, and it's going to be hard for him to take any minions on the next turn.
Yeah, I mean he has options with attacking into the Sludge Belcher and then keepering his own Sylvanas, shooting it for 2. But yeah, the risk from there of stealing something not very effective and wasting your cards for essentially just suiciding one of your cards to potentially steal like a 1/2 slime or something, it just doesn't seem particularly effective.
I will say though that Ancient of War is probably one of your best answers for this type of board when your opponent doesn't have an equality in hand.
Right, but we're at, like, even if he does go ahead and play Ancient of War here, it's going to get eaten through pretty comfortably because we see the second Quartermaster in hand from Weasel. If he plays Ancient of War, he has no options to remove any of these 3/3s. So Ancient of War will bite the dust pretty effectively.
I wonder.
So pretty complicated turn here from Faeli. He has the option to detonate his own Sylvanas and try and steal something, and he can narrow down the board beforehand with things like Swipe to clear off some of the minions he doesn't want. But whether or not he thinks that's the play, it looks like he is going to go for it. Or is he going to... Oh no, he's just going to go ahead and shoot the 2/2. Okay.
The problem with Swipe is there's not really too many amazing targets here.
Right.
Everything has either 2, 3, or 5 HP. Nothing at 4 HP, nothing at 1 HP.
Yeah. So do we have lethal here? I don't think so. So 1 recruit and a slime goes into the taunt, and then he has 10, 12, 13, 14 damage, plus a maximum of 2 potential knives. So there's lethal in no world whatsoever here.
It's also really dangerous to put your opponent on low HP while just trying to go for lethal, because Paladin, again, no really good burst in this deck.
Right.
Both True Silvers have been used, and if indeed he's using the same deck list as Tom, there's pretty much no burst whatsoever.
Right.
No Blessing Kings, not even like a Defender of Vargas.
Yeah. And as weird as it sounds, like turning those 3/3s into 5/5s actually starts to become a little bit scary, because the Sylvanas is still sat on the board, and suddenly like the average value of what Sylvanas is stealing is increasing, which is kind of strange. You know, you are buffing the rest of your minions as well, because so you know, like the equivalent value on the board stays the same. You know, he steals a 5/5, you just trade back with a 5/5. Like it's fine. But okay, so he didn't steal the live 5/5, stole the. Oh! All right, this series is going places, Monk. It's going places.
Yeah, quite a few mistakes from both players already. I would have said it's not as relevant because missing the 5 damage to face isn't as relevant, but he would have definitely wanted to trade there to keep his 1/2 alive.
Right. It's actually kind of a pretty big mechanical misplay from Weasel, because what you can do is pick up your minion that you can attack with and just aim it down your own line of minions and see which one you're allowed to attack. Yeah. You don't have to wait for the animation to happen. So, you know, I curse some of the animations in this game more than anyone, but in that scenario, it's actually pretty easy to play around the animations. Yeah, but if you're aware of the interactions.
Yeah, and even look at that. Oh, okay. So just developing the board a bit more. He could have actually just cleared this entire board if he really wanted to.
Right.
But I like this play.
Yep. And just like that, the difference between not killing that 2/5 is just enormous straight away, because we see that the state of the board just instantly reversed from how far ahead he was last turn with like an army of 5/5s on the board to where we are now is just a pretty outrageous swing in one turn. Ooh, cut purse. Druid doesn't mind having some extra coins.
Yeah, certainly not. I mean, there is Force of Nature Savage Roar that we have to talk about. And obviously Force of Nature Savage Roar Savage Roar. Yet another way for Druid to get that full combo off without an Innervate and an Emperor Thorzen.
Yep. So we see Wild Growth come into hand. He can actually Wild Growth here, top deck the Savage Roar, and then get the coin from the cut purse and still have lethal. That's pretty fun, right? Let's do that. All right, Savage Roar, come on. Let's do it. Aww.
Well, that actually leads to a pretty interesting turn since there's no BGH from Faeli's hand.
Is he going to fish for it again? Yeah, I think he can afford to, right? Because he can still develop Lower Theb after, even if he whiffs, which is, you know, still enough pressure on the board. He's fairly safe. He probably knows he's not going to die this turn, and you know, Lower Theb on the board is just going to be enough pressure where he can lower his opponent to a point where the Savage Roar top deck is lethal anyway. Duty calls. So he goes ahead and picks up his coin here, and he's just going to slam the Dr. Boom. Interesting. And he's going to coin the Hero Power to clear out one of the boom bots by the looks of things. Interesting. I'm wondering about the sequencing there and whether he should have waited to see the boombot outcomes before making other attacks, because maybe he could have cleared away the boom, but I guess there's always the danger of the boombots killing the things he hasn't yet attacked with, so hard to say. Anyway, from Weasel's side, we do see the big game hunter, so he's going to have a much easier time dealing with Dr. Boom than his opponent did, but he's still staring down a pretty grim situation for himself here.
Yeah, the 7/4, it looks scary, but again, not really much burst from the Paladin.
Right.
So even if he goes 7 to face, he's not going to be able to really get much out of it. Although you can't really trade into this type of board.
No.
At the same time.
Yeah, it's 7/4 into a 2/2 or a 2/1. That's not happening ever, is it? Really? I mean, does it play around anything? Does it play around like Druid of the Claw Savage Roar if he clears one extra minion? I'm too lazy to do the maths right now. Monk, do maths for me.
I've got the beast in my sight.
Well, we'll just trust that Weasel's done the maths correctly, right? Okay, so
he's actually going to trade. Okay.
So he would have had 3 power left on board. Druid of the Claw is 4, so 7, and Savage Roar adds 8. So that would have been 15. So yes, it does play around Druid of the Claw Savage Roar.
Yeah, he won't die to the same thing 2 series in a row.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Hardly surprising that he chose to play around Druid of the Claw Savage Roar that turn.
Well, looks like he has to go for defensive Force of Nature.
Yeah, not putting enough trust in the Ancient of War here, even though it's pretty competitive against that board, but he knows that he's dead to Owl if he does that, and we haven't seen the Owl yet. But, you know, 1 card in hand, maybe it was worth playing the Ancient of War and keeping that force of nature for the eventual top deck Savage draw that you know is coming. Hello.
I was just gonna say Tyrion or bust here. Looks like it's gonna be Tyrion.
I choose Tyrion.
Yeah, not a bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I could capture a Tyrion in Pokemon, I think I would.
And suddenly, Big Game Hunter as Jungle Panther is just doing a lot of work. Like, a 4-2 that can't be answered is actually a pretty scary minion when you're at 12 life.
Also, suddenly, I think Weasel is probably questioning his Dr. Boom attack in the previous turn.
Right. That's a very good point.
If you just went for face, Druid would be at 5, and this Tyrion would be much more threatening.
Mm-hmm.
I think... Yeah, if the Druid were at 5 HP, like, he would have to play Ancient of War pretty much, or just go for a Walled Growth and hope to... I'm not even sure what he could top deck.
Right. This is really awkward as well because he can't afford to hero power the Divine Shield really, and or throw the 3/3 in. So he's just left with the Divine Shield just gets to pick up max value trading into the Ancient of War, which is a really miserable situation. It's one of the lowest value Ancient of Wars that didn't have like a hard answer used against it that you'll ever see.
Yeah, normally you're very happy when the Ancient of War tanks 10 HP.
Right.
But this is not one of those scenarios.
No.
And yet again, the game state is just like turned around completely.
Mm-hmm. Top deck second Force of Nature is lethal here for Faeli. Nope. 3 cards are pretty good though.
3 cards into what though? Swipe.
I mean, you can draw the 3 cards and still Savage Draw, right? And is that enough to clear the board? Yeah, so this is fine. This doesn't leave lethal on the board anyway, so you don't really need to pick up anything, but he finds the swipe anyway. And we do see the Mind Control tech.
Yeah,
so this is
mentioned,
the Acidic Ooze Harrison Jones Mind Control tech Druid.
Basically all the techs you need against Paladin. We mentioned that this matchup is usually 50-50.
Right.
But I think that swings it around to at least 55-45 or perhaps even 60-40.
Mm-hmm. So this will be the point where Weasel is really hoping that he plays... actually, okay, if the 2-2 gets removed, it doesn't matter anymore. But I believe both True Silvers were played early, so he has no burst in the form of weapons. So he's looking at something like Blessing of Kings to push damage in this matchup now, but even then, he's only looking at 9 damage with the Blessing of Kings. Hey, Consecrate's a pretty good card, though.
Consecrate is relevant. If he trades here, he doesn't automatically die.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we still have a game, amazingly enough.
I mean, do we? How does Paladin win from this point is my question. Because like Tyrion's gone, Boom is gone, both True Silvers are gone, and he's not going to have a board to generate Blessing of Kings anymore. So I just struggle to see how he gets on the board and hits his opponent in the face ever anymore.
The only thing I can imagine is Cog Hammer into Consecrate, perhaps.
Sure.
But that's not going to be it.
Yeah, and that is just going to be game. And we're pulling it back all the way to 2-2.
Yeah, pretty amazing that, like, after all these back and forth games, maybe not the highest level play that we can see in all of Hearthstone.
Sure.
We're going to go down to a Paladin Mirror, a deck that has really struggled for both players so far in the tournament. There's pretty much been no Paladin wins, or at least no mid-range Paladin wins, on the main stage throughout the entire day.
Okay, well, we are at least guaranteed to see our first one now. A Paladin deck has to win this game. And as we mentioned, the Acidic Ooze Harrison Jones Mind Control tech thing, it's aimed at Grim Patron, classically. I mean, that's where the deck came from. But it's pretty good in a Paladin mirror as well, right? No, wait, what am I talking about? That's the Druid deck, right? Okay, I've gone insane. This game has just driven me insane, Mark.
Well, we know that Weasel, at least, is playing Harrison Jones in his Paladin deck.
Which is important, yeah.
Yeah, but we don't know what Faeli is playing in his Paladin deck, perhaps.
Okay. But we did talk about it earlier, like how many tech cards and just flavor options get rotated in and out of Paladin. So it's basically going to come down to like who has the more competitive build in the mirror matchup. But like, do you have any like preference for flavor cards in Paladin that help out in the mirror?
I honestly think the mirror is a lot about the early game, so it doesn't really help that much. Again, though, one of the cards I really like in the Paladin mirror is Justicar Trueheart, because it allows you to just like win the late game early. Like pretty much if you draw that card and you're in a competitive situation with your opponent, you pretty much win the game.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there are some early-ish game flavor options that can improve, like
Coghammer.
Coghammer is really good. Acolyte of Pain can be really good as well. Just because many of the Paladin's early options like Minibot and just Hero Power, I guess, Zombie Chow, you get really good Acolyte value off if they don't have the True Silver to answer. But I think you're definitely right to ping out Coghammer. I think that can be a huge swing on the board early in the game. So it'll be interesting to see who has the most competitive build here. But honestly, a lot of this is gonna come down to the draws. And like you say, like who gets off to that start? Like, is one player gonna get the Zombie Chow, Minibot, Muster for Battle Dream, or are we gonna see things decided more in the late game?
Yeah.
Justice
All right, here we go. We're into the game.
retribution.
And both of them pretty miserable early game hands. Aldor, the only potential keep. Oh, it looks like Faeli's considering the Harrison keep here, which on the coin is decent because it can interact quickly enough with a Muster for Battle to really swing the game quite hard. And then obviously just the on-curve True Silver kill as well.
What that keep means is that his early game will be potentially weaker, and we
Right.
can definitely see it from this opening hand.
Yeah. That is probably 3 of the worst early game cards you'll ever see. Big Game Hunter not going to be played as a Jungle Panther here. Knife Juggler comes into the hand though, which improves things a little bit, but he'd still rather have his shielded minibots than his Muster for Battle for sure.
Reporting for duty.
So are we going to go ahead and play the Knife Juggler here, or are we just going to Hero Power? He's definitely considering. Knife Juggler does get answered quite effectively by Muster for Battle here, but it's not like the Hero Power does much better. It's just you get to retain a Knife Juggler in your hand. But the potential payoff for your opponent not having the Muster for Battle is huge if you play the Knife Juggler.
Well, one thing is that Faeli, he saw that Weasel kept 1 card in his opening hand.
Sure.
And if you don't play any cards on turn 1 or 2, that means it's either something like Muster or perhaps Harrison Jones.
Yeah, maybe a True Silver.
Yeah.
But I agree. You could put together a pretty nice read on it being Muster for Battle there for sure.
True Silver also, I think, is slightly less likely when you don't have the coin in your hand.
Yeah, I agree. So Aldor Peacekeeper, not exactly the most effective card here. It's a 3/3 body, but the battle cry does nothing. But how slow is Hero Power here? Just doesn't even deal with a 1/1 because of how good Light's Justice is in the mirror, and it really is fantastic. Like Light's Justice comes into its own in the mirror matchup just because of how much advantage you get on the Hero Powers. So yeah,
Feels bad.
it does. It feels bad, but he gets himself a 3/3, which trades for the majority of this board. I don't think Coin Consecrate was a reasonable play, especially when he's holding the Harrison there as an answer. So he's kind of just left with the 3/3 as like the best of a bad lot, basically. Every play seemed bad, but this one seemed the best of them.
I think we're going to see the reverse tempo Aldor kind of.
Oh, so I didn't see which card he top decked. Is that an Aldor that he's holding right
Yes.
now? Okay. There we go. Interesting. It doesn't. I mean, again, you're pretty much just playing it for a 3/3 body, right? Like it heals you for 2 if you're going to attack with your weapon, but that's not the most relevant thing. So it's an interesting play here. Like from his side, he kind of can afford to just Hero Power if he wants to, because he's the one who's ahead. But it is a much more low tempo play than developing the 3/3 here.
Yeah. What developing the 3/3 does for Faeli is that if Weasel doesn't trade into this, he can actually, and he like whiffs on this turn, Faeli can actually be ahead in terms of board state if he just consecrates the next turn.
Okay.
Whereas he wouldn't be ahead otherwise.
Sure.
The problem with using Consecrate is that in a long game, which this game looks to be going into, Consecrate's really important, and it's often who uses the first 2 Consecrates that loses the game, because you know your opponent, if he uses 2 Consecrates, he doesn't have yet another board clear.
Yeah, I really like the Coin Harrison here. It draws 2 cards, and it's actually kind of a nice insurance policy against Quartermaster as well, because as we saw in the game that Weasel played against Hoy, 5/4 is just not a nice shape for Quartermastered minions to deal with. Like they both have to trade into it if they want to trade, or if they don't trade, then the Harrison just gets to pick up the Quartermaster itself for free and just trade cleanly into the 2/5. So I really like the play here to just coin out the Harrison, get the cards, ask the opponent a question.
To arms, men!
I'm going to look to see if there's any trading going on here.
Nope.
I think it's fine. I think you expect the Harrison to trade into something, and then you can just consecrate the rest of the board off.
Right. And I think if Faeli switched on here, I think he can kind of attune himself to that, because he sees that his Harrison's going to be left at 2 health after it trades into the Quartermaster. So you know, something like mini bot Muster, which looks like a kind of a nice play with 5 mana, he might just be too scared of the effects of a Consecrate on his board if he does that. So it'll be interesting to see what he comes up with here to try and find kind of a balance, but that he really doesn't have many other options. Interesting. He's going to pick up one of the 3/3s here. Does that give us any indication about what he's planning to do? Like, why does he want one less 3/3 on the board specifically?
More likely than not, he is really afraid of... Okay.
Alright, I like this.
So he saw what 2 Quartermasters could do in the previous game, so he wants to prevent that. And in addition, like the 1 HP of the Harrison Jones only really matters if a second muster for battle is in Weasel's hand.
Sure. I like this play a lot just for like tempo reasons, because you're going to see Consecrate. If your opponent has it, the rest of his turn is probably hero power, and then you just have a weapon equipped to deal with the 2/1, and then this turn you can just play Murloc Knight hero power, and you've successfully, like over 2 turns, you've successfully seized the board. So I really like that play. It was not something that I saw, but yeah, Faeli picked it out nicely, and it's developed him into a pretty nice board position here.
What is key at this point is that Weasel is quite in a bit of lead in terms of life total. And even though Paladin doesn't have a lot of burst in the matchup, it's pretty relevant since it's going to be a lot of trading. A lot of weapon hits will be involved in the matchup, and there's actually not that much healing in either of the decks. Just lay on hand and a potential good joust from the
Tuskar Jouster, yeah.
Yes.
Looks like Sylvanas is the play that Weasel's considering this turn. Harrison seems pretty good here, but we're getting into the territory where like maybe the game's progressed long enough that you're just earmarking Harrison for Ashbringer at this point. If that comes out. But then again, he does have the Owl in his hand, so you know, Harrison for 2 cards seems pretty reasonable here, but can't argue too much with a Sylvanas either.
Yeah, I agree with you. At this point, it feels like Harrison just might be saved for some value plays instead of just getting card advantage. Since both players have a decent amount of cards anyway at this point.
Right. Ironbeak and Aldor. Yep, in the correct order as well. Hey, look at that.
So what this means is now that Faeli, he's kind of given up on the on being able to answer Tyrion. So he's going for a huge tempo play here. If your opponent doesn't have Consecrate, then you can just swarm the board.
All right. He's actually like he has telegraphed to his opponent now that Tyrion is basically free because the Harrison is gone and the Owl is gone, and classically you don't play multiple copies of either weapon removal or silence in Paladin decks. So
yeah, not only that, the Ashbringer actually isn't particularly that valuable since you're being pressured already.
Right.
It's kind of like the situation where like you're against some kind of hunter deck and you get the Ashbringer, but you actually can't use it on anything but your opponent's face since you take too much damage.
You just have to overwrite it with True Silver anyway to get the healing back. Yeah, I've had to do that on more than one occasion. Yeah, Tyrion seems pretty tasty here, but it looks like he's eyeing up some sort of equality play. Maybe he just views that Murloc Knight as such a big threat again, just saying the Murloc Knight has to die here. Again, we've seen people respect that Murloc Knight a lot. We've already seen the Shield Slam execute play from Faeli to take care of a Murloc Knight, and now it looks like it's going to eat an equality as well from the other side. Yeah, so much respect for Murloc Knight. Wow.
So an option here is to play his own Murloc Knight or play the Sludge Belcher to kill off 2 minions. He has to get pretty lucky here, though.
Buffs the 2, yeah, he buffs his opponent's Murloc as well. And what if he gets War Leader here? Like, oh my god. Like, the War Leader would have been disastrous, right? He would have buffed 2 Murlocs on his opponent's side. The buff's plus 2/2, right?
Yes.
So he would have had 3, 6, 8, 9, 12, 13, 17. He would have had lethal. Murloc War Leader would have actually been lethal. That's insane.
I honestly don't think Weasel have gone for this line of play if he remembered that Murloc's buff is
opponents Murlocs as well.
Right, yeah. It's because like the Murloc decks have been out of the meta for a while, you kind of forget about the symmetrical nature, like unless you've played Murloc mirrors before.
Or unless
like,
you played a lot of Arena.
Right, yeah. Well, then, I mean, again, like you're generally avoiding picking Murlocs if you can in Arena. Anyway, I believe it has to be Tyrion time now. I mean, 9 mana, so
Tyrion doesn't even save him at this point.
He doesn't have the double. Does it not? 1, 3, 6. No, it doesn't. You're right. Okay, not even
Way
close.
too much damage.
Yeah,
on
way
Void.
too much damage. Wow, has Faeli's actually just come all the way back? He's actually done it.
Wow. Yeah, and from kind of like a not too great of a start in this game.
Let me think.
3, 4. I think maybe Belcher Owl is enough. Yeah, it looks like he's going for it. Because you need to do 11.
No, I think it's exact lethal here.
You need to do 11 and you have 11. Yeah, okay, fine.
Well, there we go.
So, after all that crazy series, Faeli has ended up coming all the way back from 2-0 down to take the series 3-2, recovering from that disastrous Patron performance where he ended up winning the game anyway, but managed to pull it together and pretty solidly. I mean, if anything, in the last few games, the misplays were coming from Weasel's side more than Faeli,
Yeah.
so it looks like he was able to put himself together pretty well.
Yeah. Also, what this means is I think Faeli, he's won money in his first tournament. By
That's
securing a top 4 finish, he
Nice.
guarantees himself $1,250.
That's
So
fantastic.
not bad for a day of Hearthstone.
Yeah, I certainly can't complain. Amazing performance, honestly. Like after that Patron game, I would have many players would have just cracked and just been down and out and just had no way to come back and dig themselves out of the hole and start playing good Hearthstone again. But he managed to do it, and I think like maybe you can even say, even with the disastrous Patron game, that like over the course of the entire series, he may have been the better player over the merit of the 5 games. But yeah, crazy series overall.
Yeah, I mean, any good player can sometimes just flub and make a series of bad plays,
Right.
especially with Patron Warrior. So I'm actually just really curious to see what the panelists have to say
Sure.
about like that entire series of games, which were pretty crazy. So
Over to Lothar.
Thanks, guys. Lothar,
Well,
the floor is yours.
those games reminded me a lot of previous Gfinity, where players were constantly nervous, and I think that Faeli, right?
Filing. Let's go with that.
Yeah, he was failing a lot with this Patron game, and I think he should maybe reconsider his name, but he won the game. So, congrats to him. Both players were playing terribly at some point. I would say it was really disastrous. The coin from Weasel, that was like, I don't know what happened.
It's playing too fast and misclicking.
But that was, if someone was watching Gfinity last time, they should take notes. Don't play fast.
Yeah.
Take your
Yeah,
time. Watch live coach. See how he's roping 17.5 seconds every single turn.
Maybe don't play quite that slow.
Yeah, but
I think the thing is,
Just
when you're highlighting cards before they're even in your hand, like that's too fast. Like that's not even saying you need to play slow in general. That's like the card's not even in your hand. Just sit for a second.
There was one player last time, Unskiller, I think.
Yeah,
that was just
Unskiller.
like
yeah, throwing cards out. Yeah.
card slinging every single turn. Draw, boo, played, lost. Oh, okay, that happened. Like it's really not wise to play that fast. Not think about your moves. Like an example, that turn when he didn't shield block with 2 cards in hand.
Yeah.
When he would have drawn Warzone Commander, win the game instantly. Well, he wasn't punished because he plays the overpod deck, the Patron, which is you make mistakes and still win. But that was one of the worst turns I have ever seen.
I think the weird thing about it is like one of the first things you teach someone that starts to play Hearthstone is that like if you can draw, you always draw first. But then the
usually
fact
draw
that you
first,
just have, most it's a general rule.
Yeah.
But then like when you only have shield block and the
Inner
rage in hand, when the inner rage isn't going on an acolyte, like just draw. Like you've got 10 mana. Like
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
let's take a look at this group here. Group A is done. We are done with that group for the day. And we can take a look at how it's shaken out here. Obviously, it's a double elimination group. So we can see that Hoy came through as the first place of Group A, and Faeli Faeli has come through the lower brackets, beating Cypher and beating Weasel in that very close, very long series.
That was exhausting for everyone.
I think fatigue actually really had an impact on that series as well, because we saw from Weasel as well. There was some misplays, and he looked angry with himself as well, so he knew like he'd messed up. But I think like because the series was quite long, and even it's not as if because it just went to 5 games, but because the games themselves were long as well. I think it just took a toll, and the pressure on the match of being win this and you're through, lose and you're not. It's a lot to build up with, and let's say the guys aren't used to playing in a situation like this. I think altogether it just exploded into
All right. Well, we need a few minutes here to recover after that before we get our next game, and I think you maybe do too. So we're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to bring you our next game. It's going to be the first game of Group B. We're going to see Green Sheep flying the flag for the UK against Carlotti. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Gfinity Summer Masters 2.